Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Chris Jones. I'm the chairperson of the board. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via the WebEx platform. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room. Then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members may comment. Each participant will have 2 minutes to comment. Moderator, would you please provide the audience with instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
Certainly. When a public comment is announced, as spoken, participants in the room may approach the front of the room and form a line if there are multiple wishes to comment. And on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment, you may either raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you may look for the question mark icon, which will appear when a comment is open. Click that question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send. We will take comments in the order received, and we do limit people to 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Members, during the roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or licensed member. Christina, would you please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Good morning. Dr. Annette Walker,
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Annette Walker, Public Board Member.
Susan Friedman,
Susan Friedman, public member.
Max Disposti,
Present, public member.
John Sovek,
Present, LMFT member, pronouns he, him.
Wendy Strack,
Present, public member.
Christopher Jones,
Present, board chair, LEP member.
Kelly Ranasinghe,
Present, public member.
Abigail Ortega,
Present, LCSW member.
Eleanor Uribe.
Present, LCSW.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin, I want to remind all speakers to remain on topic when making comments on the agenda items. This is going to be a full 2 days, and I want to make sure that we get to every agenda item. Additionally, we will be taking a lunch break around 11:30. This will depend on where we are with the hearing cases. Next item on the agenda is suggestion for future agenda items. Are there any future agenda item suggestions from our board members? Okay, great. Are there members of the audience that would like to suggest future agenda items? Okay, are there any members of our remote audience that would like to suggest future agenda items? Moderator, would you please open the lines?
We've opened up the WebEx public comment feature. If you would like to make a comment, a suggestion for a future agenda item, you may look for the hand icon and click that, or the question mark icon and click that. Type the word comment and click send, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. We do have a hand raised from someone logged into WebEx as Erica Carroll. Erica, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and then you will have 2 minutes to speak.
I was just curious if we can add to future agenda items a discussion regarding the application process for the BBS and what the board can do about streamlining this process and creating a more efficient and transparent process for applicants. Just to have a conversation about, the BBS potentially addressing that process.
Thank you, Erica.
And I do not see any other requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next on our agenda is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I will now ask for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Each commentator will have 2 minutes. Are there any comments from our board members? Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from those in the audience? Thank you. Are there any comments from our remote participants? Moderator, would you please open the lines?
Certainly, we've opened up for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you may click the hand icon to raise your hand. You may click the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. We do have a request for comment from Erica Carroll. Erica, I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I also wanted to know if there have been any updates regarding the racial disparities that were found on the licensed clinical social work exam and what the BBS is doing to address these disparities.
Thank you, Erica. We are not permitted at this time to discuss any public comments. This is simply to determine whether or not we'll put this item on a future agenda for a future meeting.
And this is the moderator. I do not see any other requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, moderator, thank you.
You're welcome.
At this time, we will begin our petition hearings. Today, the proceedings will be conducted by Judge Marcy Larson. Good morning, Judge Larson. The meeting is yours.
All right, good morning. Our first hearing is going to be the matter of the petition for reduction of penalty by Stephen Guevara. Is that correct? Mr. Guevara, if you would please come up to the table and have a seat. All right. In just a moment here, we're going to go on the record. We have a court reporter. She's going to be taking down everything that's being said. I will take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General and yourself, and then I will briefly explain how the hearing is going to proceed this morning. If you have any questions about the procedures, you can ask me at that time, all right? All right, and you're going to have to turn your microphone on.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, then, as soon as our court reporter tells me she is ready, we will get started. Yes, on the record. Good morning. We are on the record. It is August 17th, 2023, in the matter of the petition for a reduction of penalty by Stephen, is it Pierre?
Yes.
Guevara. This matter is being heard by and before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California. This is OAH case number 2023-070503, board case number 2002-02001592. My name is Marcy Larson. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings presiding over the matter this morning with the board. I'm going to ask our board members to please identify themselves for the record, starting to my right with the board president.
Chris Jones, Board President and LEP member.
Kelly Runisinger, public member.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Eleanor Uribe, licensed clinical social worker.
Wendy Strack, public member.
John Sovek, LMFT.
Max Disposti, public member.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
We do have a quorum present. All right, Mr. Guevara, we're here today, as you know, for the petition that you have filed. As I mentioned before we went on the record, I'm going to take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General.
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General.
And Mr. Guevara, you're representing yourself today, is that correct?
That's correct.
You are aware that you could have had an attorney represent you at your own expense,
Yes.
and you're choosing to represent yourself.
That's right.
All right. So the hearing this morning that before the board concerns the petition that you have filed requesting a reduction of penalty. The board is primarily concerned about any rehabilitation that you have undertaken since your license was disciplined and you were placed on probation. The way that the hearing will proceed is that the Deputy Attorney General will first present the petition package into evidence, and give the board members a brief orientation of your license history and the history of the discipline of your license. After that, you'll have an opportunity to then make your presentation. I will swear you in and you will testify under oath. I want to remind you that the board has the benefit of all of the documents that you've submitted in support of your petition, which the Deputy Attorney General will identify for the board members. So you do not need to repeat anything that is in those documents. If there's things that you want to highlight or draw the board's attention to, certainly do that. If there's any additional testimony of information that's not in the petition package, you can certainly do that as well. After you provide your testimony, I will ask the Deputy Attorney General if she has any questions for you. You may object to any question she asks of you, but you have to have a legal basis not to answer a question. So if you have an objection to a question, you just please let me know. I'll find out why you're objecting, and then I'll make a decision on whether or not you need to answer that question. After the Deputy Attorney General is done questioning you, I will then ask our board members if they have any questions for you as well. So for each board member, I will ask if they have a question, and then I will make sure that the board members identify themselves for the record also before they ask you that question. So once all of the board members have had an opportunity to ask you questions, I will ask you if you have anything left to add. And then if you do, you can certainly provide additional testimony. At the end, I will ask both you and the Deputy Attorney General if you have any closing remarks. And then once all of the evidence has been presented, the record is closed and we will go off the record. The board will be deliberating in closed session today, so you will not receive a decision today. All right, I know that's a lot of information. I can't give any legal advice, but if you have any questions about the procedures, please ask me. And if I can answer the question, I will.
Thank you.
No questions?
No questions right now.
All right, then. All right, then. With that, I will ask the Deputy Attorney General to please give background with regards to the license history and discipline, and to please identify the records, the petition records into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 in order to assist the board in fact-finding. A brief background of this matter: the petitioner was issued Associate Clinical Social Worker Registration Number ASW 85985 on September 25th of 2018. The petitioner's Associate Clinical Social Worker registration was upgraded to a licensed clinical social worker license on February 1st of 2023. The license is current and active and will expire February 28th of 2025. The petitioner is requesting early termination of his probation. 2 years and 8 months remain on his probation term. An accusation was filed on November 9th of 2020. The accusation was based on a conviction which occurred on August 27th of 2020, which was based on an incident in December 15th, 2019, when officers were dispatched to the Hilton Hotel in Emeryville because a vehicle had collided with another vehicle in the parking lot of the hotel. Petitioner was found asleep, slumped over the steering wheel of his vehicle, and his blood alcohol level was a 0.26. He also tested positive for THC. Petitioner was charged in the accusation with unprofessional conduct and use of alcohol and controlled substances in a dangerous manner. A settlement was entered into effective April 26th of 2021, placing petitioner on probation for 5 years until April 26th of 2026. As part of his probation, petitioner was required to undergo a psychological evaluation, psychotherapy, dependency support program, education classes, biological fluid testing, and to pay costs. On April 26th of 2022, the petitioner was granted a reduction in testing frequency due to completing 1 year of probation successfully. And in October of 2022, petitioner was granted a reduction of frequency of therapy sessions from weekly to monthly on the recommendation of his therapist. He is compliant in all aspects of his probation. Your Honor, I'd like to move our exhibits into evidence at this point. Exhibit 1 is the memo to the board from the probation analyst. It provides a summary of petitioner's probation status. I would request a stipulation from the probationer to introduce this into evidence.
Any objection to Exhibit 1?
No objection.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is a notification of hearing to the petitioner for today's hearing date.
Right. Any objection to the notification of hearing?
No, thank you.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
3 is the certification of license history for this petitioner.
Any objection to your license history?
No objection.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 is the petition for early termination of probation, along with attachments in support. I have a couple of requests regarding this exhibit. First, that AGO 29 through 40 be sealed if introduced. And also that Exhibit 4 contains hearsay, that those statements be introduced pursuant to administrative hearsay, and the rest, I believe, are going to be statements by respondent, and we request those be introduced as direct admissions.
All right. What is the basis for sealing AGO 29 through 40?
It is a psychological evaluation.
Right. Any objection to the sealing of that evaluation?
Not at all.
All right. So just so you understand, of course, this is a public hearing. The public is free to be here to watch the hearing.
Mhm.
The exhibits, to the extent that those have been admitted into evidence, are public, which means that the public can request the documents. And if there's no reason to withhold those documents, there's no privileges or exemptions to withholding those, they're released.
Mhm.
I have the ability to seal documents that contain private information such as medical information.
Mhm.
And the representation is that this is a psychological evaluation which contains medical information.
Mhm.
So as a result, I will put that under protective order. The
Mhm.
board, of course, has the benefit of reviewing those documents
Mhm.
because they are the individuals who will be making the decision in this case. But if the public were to ask for those documents, unless they had a legal authority to receive those documents, those would be precluded from disclosure. Do
Mhm.
you understand?
Yes.
All right, so I am sealing exhibits, Exhibit 4, AGO 29 through 40. Those will be placed in a protective order. And then with regards to any hearsay, so typically in a court proceeding, an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth by somebody who's not here to testify
Mhm.
can't be considered. However, in an administrative proceeding such as this, the board can consider hearsay statements if they supplement or explain other evidence. So say there's a statement that's from an individual in Exhibit 4 that says that you have been attending counseling on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And then there's documents that show those appointments, and then you testify about those appointments.
Mhm.
That hearsay statement is supplementing other evidence that the board can consider as direct evidence.
Mhm.
So to the extent that there is hearsay, I will direct the board to only consider that information if it supplements or explains other evidence. Do you understand?
Yes, Judge.
All right. All right. So Exhibit 4 is admitted, and then to the extent that there's hearsay, it will be considered as administrative hearsay.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a similar request to Exhibit 5. It is psychotherapy information that was provided by the petitioner's therapist. It contains not diagnoses, but it does contain areas of work that the petitioner participated in with his therapist. And so we would, in an abundance of caution, request that also be admitted but sealed, and also admitted as administrative hearsay.
Right. Any objection to the sealing?
No objection.
And to the extent that there's hearsay in that document, it will be considered as administrative hearsay. All right. Exhibit 5 will be sealed.
And Exhibit 6 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order along with the underlying accusation in this matter.
All right. Any objection to Exhibit 6?
No objection.
Exhibit 6 is admitted. Council, I have some additional documents. First of all, we have the notice of hearing that was issued by the Office of Administrative Hearings. That should have been something that you received, both petitioner and and the Deputy Attorney General. I'm not seeing it in the package. I know that there was a different notice of hearing that went out.
I believe the notice of hearing that came from OAH was an email that indicated when the petitions were set for, but that an official notice of hearing wouldn't go out. But I may be mistaken. Do you have one?
I have one. I would like to mark it as an exhibit just to show that there's a proof of service that says you were served, both served.
Oh.
Actually,
see.
it looks like the Board of Behavioral Sciences was served, maybe not you.
Mm.
But you're certainly welcome to take a look at it,
Okay.
but it needs to be marked as an exhibit for jurisdictional purposes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Of course. Oh, yes, this is. Hold on, we have to be able to hear you. Is this something you received?
That's something we prepared, and I'm looking to see if I failed to include it in our packet.
That's fine. I have a copy to include. Did you receive this as well, Mr. Guerrero? Do you want
I
to?
received it 2 separate notices in the
Okay.
mail. One was certified with a receipt.
Yes.
So, and that one is included in the evidence packet that I received, so.
All right. This one would have been from the Office of Administrative Hearings. So
Mm.
I have the copy that I'm marking as Exhibit 7 as a jurisdictional document, just so it provides additional evidence of notice of the hearing today. So Exhibit 7 is the notice of hearing. And it is admitted for jurisdictional purposes. So the other additional documents that the board members just received appears to be some additional letters that you submitted. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Did you receive those as well?
I have, yes.
All right. So those will be marked as Exhibit 8. And is there any objection, Ms. Crawford?
I don't have any objections. I understand they'd likely be admitted under administrative hearsay. I just didn't know if you wanted to admit those under our exhibits or as a petitioner's exhibit.
I'm just going to mark it as Exhibit 8,
Okay.
just next in order
Mhm.
to keep things simple.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So letters of reference are admitted as Exhibit 8. They'll be considered as administrative hearsay. All right. Are there any other exhibits that need to be presented? Yes.
So just a comment, in Exhibit 4, it included for the most recent quarters of quarterly check-ins with my probation analyst.
Yes.
That includes psychotherapy notes with diagnoses, and it also includes AA attendance, which sometimes I write people's names and phone numbers down.
Okay.
So I just wanted to draw attention to that. I don't know if that's appropriate for sealing, but just that it does involve other people and diagnoses. So
So to the extent that there's medical information in there or information disclosing other individuals who should remain
anonymous.
be protected, I need to know what the
These
Bates numbers are for those. Ms.
Yeah.
Crawford, or Mr. Guerrero, do you have those?
And sorry, the packet was a little long, I admit.
It will, if you just take a look at, it will be within Exhibit 4, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So. Mm. So I have pages 112, AGO 112 through AGO 205. Because it's 4 quarters and these packets tend to be, 25 pages or so. So
Does that include the names of individuals from AAA?
yes,
All right, so 112 through 205?
yes, that's correct.
All right, Ms. Crawford, any objection to including those in the protective order?
No objection.
All right, so those will be included in the protective order as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything
Judge.
else?
No, that's it.
All right. All right, Ms. Crawford, any additional information you want to share with the board before I swear in Mr. Guevara?
No, Your Honor.
All right then. It's now your opportunity to provide testimony to the board. And so the first thing that I need to do is to swear you in. So if you would please stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Please have a seat.
Here.
And please state and spell your name for the record.
Yes. My name is Stephen Pierre Guevara. So Stephen, Stephen. Pierre, Pierre. Last name Guevara, Guev as in Victor, Ara.
Right, Mr. Guevara, it's now your opportunity to provide testimony to the board.
No.
I'm just going to remind you to keep your voice up. Speak a little more slowly than you're used to speaking probably in a conversation. That helps our court reporter make sure she gets down everything that you're saying and that the board can clearly hear you as well.
Very good. And can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I don't want to be yelling or whispering. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your patience. So please first allow me to show my appreciation and gratitude for this opportunity to be heard and present my case to the Board of Behavioral Sciences and demonstrate to you that I am safe to practice and not a risk to the public. I hope to present a compelling argument and look forward to answer any questions you might have. So it's been a journey to get to this moment to present to the board. I'd like to explain the circumstances that led to my DUI as laid out by the Deputy DA. Also, how the process and structure of the board's stipulated guidelines for probation have had a positive impact on providing structure while allowing me to form my own supports and hone my abilities to manage difficult situations. When I returned to living in the Bay Area in 2012, I'd already spent 7 years away at college in Santa Barbara. While in my undergrad, the social environment was highly accepting of alcohol use. There were more than a few times that I admit I had an excessive amount to drink, but at that time, this was a socially understood norm, and so I didn't view it as much of a problem. I moved to Korea for a year as a teacher in 2010, and in Korea has a robust social drinking culture, and so I'd go out with coworkers on the weekends and sometimes after work. There in Korea, I injured myself while training in martial arts, which contributed to depression and loss of enjoyment, and I found myself drinking more at that time. Once I returned to the US, I moved back in with my parents and eventually began working at a high-intensity job where I worked with acute clients in residential facilities who discharged after a 5150 medical hold. While working this job for 4 years, I also worked as the primary caregiver for my 82-year-old father. And at that time, I dealt with stress by exercising, practicing martial arts. When my father died in 2015, rather suddenly and traumatically, I found myself once again using alcohol to help with the deep feelings of regret, shame, and sadness that I felt. The following year, I began graduate school for social work, where I spent the next 2 years studying intently while interning. Once I graduated and went through a serious breakup, that is when I used alcohol the heaviest. The cumulative effect of being away for many years, having a busy work life and schedule and caregiving schedule, and then full-time graduate school left me vulnerable and isolated. I felt very alone. On the night I was arrested, it was after a work Christmas party. I saw this event as an opportunity which held strong symbolism in my goal to foster more and stronger relationships. I'd used alcohol as a crutch to manage my social anxiety and became severely impaired. I was too inebriated to make healthy decisions, and after attempting to sleep in my car, I woke up and attempted to drive home. I never left the parking lot and was found passed out behind the wheel with the engine running. It is with great contrition that I admit all that occurred was my doing and take full responsibility for what happened. I'm lucky and thankful that no one was hurt and that I was stopped from doing any further harm to myself or putting others in danger. In the immediate aftermath of being discharged from Santa Rita jail, I made 2 calls. First, I called my best friend Dan, who is also now my AA sponsor and now a witness of my sobriety and recovery. Second was my immediate supervisor at work. Tearful and distraught, I told her how sad and fearful I was of losing my job. First, she knew how much pride I took in being a social worker. Almost immediately following my arrest, I began attending AA meetings within the first 2 weeks, from December 23rd, 2019 to March 2nd, 2019. And there is a typo in my presentation. I saw I put 2020. I stopped attending because due to COVID shutting down in-person events, and we didn't have remote yet. So December 15th, 2019 was the day I was arrested and the last day I was intoxicated. However, I did have alcohol a couple times since the arrest. First was on February 8th, 2020, when visiting a friend. This would be a memory for deep reflection later, as it was a negative experience for me. It became another mark of guilt and shame, reminding me of my DUI and where I was at. I had one drink with my family on December 24th, 2020, which is my current sobriety date. My complex history with anxiety, grief, and trauma has allowed me to bring a level of authenticity and empathy to my patients and clients. I treated my journey of my DUI as another teachable moment that could allow further growth in my ability to empathize and hold space for the communities I serve. I feel the stipulations set by the board make sense with regard to rehabilitation. In the beginning of someone working in recovery, the external control of drug and alcohol testing is a strict form of accountability and a way to guarantee public safety. Not having an option to drink and choosing not to use cannabis, I was able to form my more appropriate habits of dealing with stress, engage in social activities, sober activities, and explore how I could address situations that could present as complex, triggering, or problematic in the future. The acronym HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, helps to remind about a healthy balance. Examples I've done include good sleep hygiene, exercise both individually and in groups, meditation, always deep breathing, taking breaks, calling friends, some basic CBT skills practice, mindfulness practice. I've started riding motorcycles in November of 2021 and started riding with a local motorcycle club. And I engage my therapist and talk with my sponsor. My psych evaluation helped identify my strengths, acknowledged my traumatic and substance use history, and gave me recommendations I could use in developing a plan with my therapist and areas I could explore on my own. It was new for me to focus on assertiveness as a way to manage anger and anxiety. This had been a good area of focus during therapy. I took on the challenge to focus more on being able to access mental health resources and work with my insurance provider to connect with therapy resources as well, something I'd never done before. AA is a great place to explore heavy issues in a supportive environment. It was very validating to hear people's history and motivations to drink and also choose to not drink. I really enjoy attending my Monday home meeting and plan to continue attending even if the board accepted my petition for early termination. I've been able to work the 12 steps with a sponsor and been able to reflect on a lot of issues of character and on different degrees of accountability. While I haven't completed all 12 steps, I'm currently working on step 8, which is building on the list of everyone I've harmed while using alcohol and being ready to make amends. My sponsor has helped me to be slow and purposeful. I appreciate how my sponsor challenges me to share things I feel embarrassed or ashamed of, as well as reflecting on my journey while reminding me of my responsibilities and holding me accountable. It is a powerful bond. The substance abuse education material was great for learning about how substances interact with the body, and specifically how alcohol can antagonize the very symptoms I was trying to address, specifically depression and anxiety. All these management tools have helped me explore my relationship with alcohol and what made me susceptible. I've used alcohol to distract from my feelings of inadequacy, which I understand is a way to compensate for my insecurities, which is why I'd like to explore codependency issues further. As mentioned in my psych eval, substance use is common for people suffering from diagnosis that is present in my psych eval. For privacy's sake, I'm not going to say the name if that's okay.
Right, and so just to the extent that, again, the board members do have the
Yeah.
psychological evaluation, I understand that you want to protect your medical
Is-
information, and so I'm just going to remind the board that they can take a look at the psych evaluation to just get clarification if they need to.
Yeah, and I can cite the page later.
If you would, please.
The page?
You have the page?
Oh,
Yes.
let's, I believe you. That's right, AGO 38, page 80, that has the diagnoses.
And that's Exhibit 4?
Hmm?
Exhibit 4?
Incorrect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I've had anxiety-related episodes as early as first grade. I've suffered low self-esteem patterns, which are also common for people with codependency. This includes difficulty asking for things I want and looking to others to provide a sense of safety. I've been extremely loyal, which has put me in relationship dynamics that were dysfunctional and caused me to remain in harmful situations for too long, which is why I was encouraged to work on assertiveness to practice setting healthy boundaries. I've often put aside my own interests in order to please others to avoid rejection, and therapy has been a safe space to explore all these areas. The main point in this process and why I asked for this hearing is bridging the transition from external controls to intrinsic motivation. The goal at the end of probation is for me to have the support, structure, stability, and motivation to succeed in my sobriety when the board's guardrails are no longer in place. I'm here to present the steps, both structurally and internally, I've taken to ensure that I'm safe to practice. The COVID-19 pandemic really challenged everyone. My support system and self-care were tested and grew strong through this experience. I've had a varied support system made up of personal, professional, and peer groups. Professionally, I have social workers at work who have my back and help me process through complex work and life issues. I also have multiple friends who are mental health professionals. I have friends that I message most days individually or in group chat. I have many sober or in recovery friends, and there's always my sponsor. The focus on self-care promoted by the board stipulations of probation have given me time to explore different behaviors, triggers, and resources. I've been doing a lot of internal work. I've built up quite a library of workbooks, professional education books, memoirs I'm reading that promote reflection and self-exploration. When feeling pressured, I'm better able to ask for space, such as needing to step out. After practicing with my somatic experience therapist, I understand how I can direct my parasympathetic nervous system to trigger in parts of my body, which is soothing and decreases pressured symptoms. I continue to do things for fun when I have the time, such as bike ride, motorcycle ride, and I made a big list. Play with my pet, volunteer at church, and sing. I know life naturally has stressors that can trigger anyone since life is inherently fraught with challenging experiences. Decreasing compounding stressors is important. I limit feeling rushed by making lists, make sure I've eaten, get healthy rest. Feeling safe also is key. Learning from working with trauma survivors, asking the question, is this situation safe for me, has been a very useful check-in question. The simplest self-care is budgeting time to exercise, schedule activities with friends, taking naps, and small breaks at work. But some of the most crucial self-care has been doing some deep therapy work. The journaling, morning gratitude both allow for positive framing for the day. I use some basic mindfulness tools as well. My mom's health has been in flux since she contracted COVID. Once again, I'm a primary caregiver for my mom and medical and financial durable power of attorney. What's different compared to when I was the sole caregiver for my father is I have more family support and have accepted that I don't have control over everything. When dealing with my father, I felt there could have been more I could have done, which contributed to greater guilt and grief. Letting go, which is expressed in step 3 of AA, sorry. Turning your life over to something bigger than yourself allowed me to not feel responsible for my mom's failing health. Uh, Now I'm able to ask for help when I need it, which feels starkly different than before since I feel there's a lot more support available to me, both professionally and personally. My core friend bubble became very strong during COVID. In fact, all the witnesses today were in some way part of my bubble of support. My core friends stayed connected and they are all aware of the difficulties I've been managing. My friends know that I can get anxious and are good at about checking in with me. What's different today that wasn't there before is a strong sense of support from everyone I've brought into my process of recovery. This is expressed in the 30 reference letters of support from family, friends, coworkers, mental health peers, and people representing AA. Also, the biggest growth was after reading my psych evaluation again prior to attending this proceeding. It was quite a shock. It was upsetting reading about all the anxiety, sadness, grief, and loss I reported, coupled with my drinking history. That window into what I was going through at that time versus how I feel almost 2.5 years later was stark. While stress and anxiety have not disappeared, I don't feel impacted as intensely and can cite healthy recourse to address things through self-care and reaching out for help from friends, family, and coworkers. I'm keenly aware that my mother's health and the eventuality of her death will be difficult. This will be a big test of all the healthy ways I've learned to manage painful, triggering situations. I plan to continue with therapy while asking others for help when I need it. I have friends who visit my mother with me. My workplace is supportive as I'm applying for FMLA, family medical leave. And coupled with this is my plan to continue not to drink. I don't plan to drink anymore. I was reminded I was almost 40 when I was arrested for my DUI. The experience of having so much to lose, the opportunities afforded me while not drinking, including my sober relationship with my current partner, is the clear contrast of my mental state prior to my DUI compared to now, and continues to provide me great motivation to remain sober. What assurance I present to the board that I'm safe to practice and no longer needing to be subject to the terms and conditions of probation set forth by the board is my commitment to remaining sober and all the checks and balances that hold me accountable. I know that presenting here because of a DUI presents the question as to whether I consider myself an alcoholic. My psych evaluation described alcohol use disorder in remission. We in the mental health field understand the power of labels and how they can impact people they are assigned to. Labels can also provide guideposts for what treatments are appropriate for success. I've reflected on this since first starting the process of probation. It was upsetting to say I'm an alcoholic when first attending AA meetings. I've always felt I was an anxious person with alcohol use as a coping mechanism. In exploring my life of alcohol use with friends in recovery, I'm willing to call myself a recovering alcoholic. I don't plan on drinking again and feel I've spoken with many agents involved in my sobriety who are able to support me and help hold me accountable. I actively use my experience managing my recovery when I work with patients who are attempting to manage their own substance use. My current and previous therapist are both supportive, both support my request for early termination, and I hope to get my DUI expunged once my 3-year probation is ended. My full-time job and 2 other jobs are very supportive of my petition, are included in my reference letters, represented in my reference letters. I hope I've expressed the value taken, opportunities realized during this difficult situation of being on probation. As a lifelong learner, it's important to be able to learn from hard lessons. That being said, I am seeking petition for early termination while showing proof and evidence of my rehabilitation and the development of structures and safety measures that show intrinsic stability and motivations that will further guarantee my stability in sobriety and long-term health and growth personally and professionally. I'm at the point in this process of feeling confident of my strengths, goals, trajectory, and it is my hope that the board will agree and approve my petition for early termination. Last comment. I'm always looking to improve and am eager to benefit from others' insights and critiques. If the board considers that I need further time on probation, then I'll ask for what further insights and improvements I can make in my journey. That's it. Thank
Right.
you.
Ms. Crawford, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Guevara, in the accusation under the factual allegations, it mentions that you hit some parked cars in the parking lot of the Hilton, and that's why officers were called, and that you also tested positive for marijuana, but you didn't mention that in your statement today or your petition packet. Why were those two facts left out?
So the hitting of the parked cars, I guess I didn't include that. I fell asleep at the wheel and rolled into two parked cars and was found resting against the vehicles. The police record cites that a hotel worker came out because there was a car with its lights on and engine running, and then contacted the local police, who then were dispatched. So that is what happened. As for the marijuana, that I included a lot of this was more focused for me on the alcohol use. I did address quite a bit of the marijuana aspect in the petition itself that I submitted. Now the psych eval commented about the marijuana use. My therapist and I, and it documents this in the psych eval, that I had been using marijuana for anxiety and actually pain. Like I was experiencing a lot of chronic pain. I have broken both my arms and my collarbone. And the therapist, who's a somatic experienced therapist, said, we need access to your physiology for you to heal from traumatic experiences. So marijuana would be would be antithetical to the recovery process. However, because I had been using marijuana, I contacted my board analyst, and she advised me to get a medical marijuana note to make sure that I would not test positive and be found in non-compliance. So I did that while also refraining from smoking marijuana. So within the first whole year of probation, never test positive because I never smoked marijuana, never used marijuana. And then the second year, I just didn't renew my license because I felt it was not necessary. And so, yeah, that's where we're at right now with the marijuana.
So you stopped using marijuana beginning when your probation started?
I would have tested positive, I think. So I stopped, I believe, in November of 2020.
And that's not something you've resumed?
No.
But at the time of the incident, you were using it recreationally?
I think more for pain management. And I did not use it that night. It tends to be at home when I'm trying to sleep. Was that how I was using it at that time?
Are you still on probation for any criminal case?
I believe so, but not for much longer. Pardon me, I did not review my probation court documents, which I do have in the evidence packet. I haven't been looking. I'm waiting for the SR-22, which is the DUI insurance to term, which is in October 24th, I believe. So I'm kind of waiting.
Okay, what did you have to do as part of the probation for your criminal conviction?
I have it right here. So placed on a sentence for a period of 3 years. Serve 1 day in prison or in jail, credit time served. obey all laws, report any changes of address, always use your true name, report to court when ordered. So that's,
So you don't need to read the order.
Oh.
So if there was just particular
so
things.
maybe
that-
alcohol driving conditions, since that's pertinent.
Yes, and there's usually, I'm going to assume, but I may be incorrect, that there's some type of education, maybe a DUI
Correct.
course, those types of things.
Correct.
You can
So
focus on that.
Do not drive a motor vehicle while with any measure of alcohol in your blood. Do not drink alcohol beverages to excess. Attend and complete a driving under the influence school. This was a 9-month program. I also had an ignition interlock device applied in my car. I was a frontline worker during COVID, so I had to be in person. And yep, so alcohol related, that's part of the terms and conditions of probation.
Do you still have an ignition interlock device on your car?
No, that ended once I completed the DUI course. And the completion notification is in the packet as well.
So what do you anticipate your relationship with alcohol and marijuana to be in the future?
Well, as the main focus of my petition presentation was to focus on not drinking again, and all the resources that I'm engaging to maintain that goal. Marijuana, I haven't engaged that as much as a line of thought. It'd probably be good to not do it, but I haven't discussed that with myself as much as reflecting on the alcohol. I actually found when they said, oh, well, you can smoke marijuana, I found that problematic. It's, if I had my doctor's note, you can smoke it, and because it was for pain use, but now I don't use it for pain, so I don't really have a good rationale for using it. Yeah. Sorry if I'm rambling.
Why do you have that focus on, you said my focus is on not drinking again. And based on some of the records I've read, that was not always your focus when you first entered probation.
That's right. In the psych eval, I had been, because I also was really not comfortable with describing myself as a recovering alcoholic. So in the psych eval, me and the psychologist were discussing the power of labels, like calling yourself something, like an alcoholic. And he was asking me honestly if I thought I would drink again. And at that time, I said I couldn't foresee my life without ever drinking again. So he encouraged me, which is in the end of recommendations, to review a book, which I actually ended up buying and reading. I didn't cite it in my presentation because I feel we've moved past that. Because I read the psych evaluation in the beginning when I received it, then at my 1-year mark, and then for this presentation. And it just seemed, well, there was, like I said, a stark contrast in my sense of self and how I identified from when I read it this time versus before.
What is your current living situation?
Well, I live in the house I was born in. I was there with my mother, caring for her. She had Parkinson's and then contracted COVID through me from work. And so now she's in a assisted living. So I'm there right now in a 4-bedroom house in Oakland.
And you did speak a little bit about, or generally about your support structure. What does your support structure look like?
So at work, I work for a dialysis company, and there's a social worker at every building, but only one at each place. I think I have 3 or 4 reference letters from those social work coworkers, but we also talk about professional development because a lot of them have multiple hats. So private practice therapy, I took on multiple hospital jobs through exploring with those peers. And so they're all very aware of me attending here today. So that's the professional support group area. And then when I say peer support, there's two tiers of that. Are the friends who are in recovery as well. So some people have gotten DUIs, some are just in sober living or assisted living, not assisted, sober living. And then I have a few other therapy friends, LCSWs who are also reference letters. We're kind of all in the same cohort in our career where we're talking about exploring our LCSW, doing more mental health work. And so the trials and tribulations of these areas of growth we talk about a lot, which includes me being on probation because they could be in the same situation. So how do we learn from this as a group? And my private friend group, I've got a few of them right here today who are representing as witnesses. There's 4 of them. So during COVID, maybe there was like a dozen of us, so we called our little bubble. So we'd meet in small groups and then eventually the whole group, and we'd have big group chats. One of my friends here, Dan, who's also my sponsor, we have a small group of 4 or 5 guys. We go camping and hang out. So that, and then I have siblings that are like 3 years older, 3 years younger. And my sister is local. We hang out. She's going to move in with me at the house. So that's an example.
You also took quite a number of education courses. Why did you choose the education courses you did, and how did you feel it benefited you?
So I opted for the CEUs versus like a 2-unit graduate level substance abuse course. And to be honest, it's about access and scheduling, 4 hours once a week for 3 months versus CEUs. So the CEUs, we started with what was most pertinent, which would be alcohol and marijuana, maybe tobacco was in there. And then expanded to, and some of them I had to read like, 200-page book to be able to go through the whole course. So it was 31 or 33 CEU credits. So that's a representative of 33 hours of study. So I think a lot of seeing different types of addiction and substance use. So how it affects the body, physiology and things like that, but also there's the mental health component of what motivates people. So that's represented somewhat in the packet of what type of symptoms dictate what type of addictions. I mean, they even had some about alcohol, gasoline and like sniffing glue, which was a little less pertinent. So, but I found them very insightful when talking to people about substances I haven't used. And also motivations of maybe why I was more compelled with alcohol than, say, other substances.
And can you describe a little bit about what you do at work?
So full-time, I am a dialysis medical social worker. So chronic disease, where we see people 3 days a week. They are present in the clinic 3 days a week. So CMS standards of screening for depression, quality of life surveys, kind of metrics that the state requires to show positive quality of health outcomes. At my maximum, I was covering 2 clinics and had a caseload of 165 patients. I also do per diem work at 2 local hospitals, one Kaiser facility, and then one with the Alameda Health System. So the Alameda Health System one is acute rehab. So these are people coming fresh from the ER and surgery with strokes, car accidents, gunshot survivors. Kaiser is more discharge planning and symptom management and things like that. The main one, dialysis, though, is That's a lot of engagement of, I mean, we're talking about long-term relationships because people are have this condition throughout their entire life, most often. So there's a lot of family engagement, education, relationship building. One of the key cornerstones or currency of social workers is hope. So working with people to feel safe and hopeful is kind of what I do.
How would early termination of probation affect your life or practice?
That I didn't write it in there because I'm always like to present positively. The sleep issue. So checking in for testing. So the testing, if you go and test, that's not as cumbersome as the actual regimen of waking up. On hospital days, I wake up at 3:30 because it's a clock-in job. I need to be there at 8. And so I wake up at 3:30 just to see if I need to test that day. And if I need to test, I do, because they still are allowing it remotely, thank goodness. Regular days, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, then try to go back to sleep and then go to work. So I was working out a lot right before I went on probation, and I felt the difference physically within weeks. I was more achy, more tired, just less comfortable in my body. So for me, that is the pinnacle of what is impacting me. When I say healthy sleep hygiene, usually that is on the weekends where I don't set my alarm and I'm allowed to sleep in. So that would be number one. Therapy, I would say I would move from private pay to insurance so that I'm not paying a high amount. Everyone knows the financial impact of this is a byproduct as opposed to just the punitive feel of it. But in the first year, I spent almost 25 to 30% of my take-home income paying for probation-related things. So I think there would be a reduction in stress involving those things, and that would allow for more bandwidth for the stuff that I am being responsible for, like the medical and financial power of attorney for my mom. My sister and I break up visiting her daily. So I visit her 3 to 4 times a week after work.
You said with regards to therapy, you could move from private pay to insurance. I'm not sure I understand.
So yeah, sorry. Private pay means I'm paying out of pocket versus if I go through my insurance provider, which I did before, but the probation analyst warned me, they usually don't pay for that, or they're not going to cover it. So even though I presented it in evidence of conversations I had, lists I had made while calling mental health providers through my insurance, like 9 therapists, no one's taking it. So one therapist said, maybe I can find someone for you who's willing to go through this with you. So, and that therapist, I really enjoyed him. Then he got COVID and has long COVID. His explanation of why he couldn't be my therapist anymore is in the packet. So yeah, I would try and move back to the insurance covering it and just have a copay instead of $125 a week per sessions. Now it's once a month, so.
Okay, so it's your understanding or experience that therapy is not covered by your insurance because you're on probation?
When given the list of expectations of a therapist who's paneled through insurance, one of the phrases was, we would need access to your mental health notes and writing, and they don't know how to bill for the quarterly reports because that is not a therapy session, so they couldn't bill insurance effectively. So it's the structure of reimbursement that wasn't efficient to cover all the costs that a paneled therapist through insurance provider would require.
Okay. So if probation is terminated early, can you list the rehabilitation and recovery efforts that you'd continue to do even without probation?
Well, the therapy would be a good thing because I'm still just dealing with a lot in my personal life. AA, I really like the Monday meeting. It's like in my schedule right now, it works really well. It's I don't want to say which specific one it was so people can look it up, but, or does that matter? It's in Berkeley. They have them every day, multiple hours, but I prefer the one on Monday at 7. I want to explore some CODA, so codependency group meetings. And so that's something I would like to add in there. As I cited in the packet, I participated in an EMDR and brain spotting training certificate courses, and got the opportunity to be a practice person. So I got 2 full sessions in front of a group of people with like a seasoned professional in each practice. So mainly that I was doing that to deal with personal things like processing my dad's death and stuff. So I think continuing to work on those issues would be very helpful for kind of managing feelings of maybe being a little overwhelmed emotionally. You know, because I am dealing with my mom's health, which is spotty at best.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
I'm now going to ask our board members if they have any questions. So if you do have a question, just please state your name first so our court reporter can make sure she's identifying the question with the right person. So I'm going to start to my right with our president.
Well, thank you for your testimony. I have no questions.
Thank you, sir.
Continuing to my right.
Thank you for coming Thank you for coming today. You indicated you had 30 reference letters,
That's correct.
and that includes your psychotherapist, members of your workplace, and your current supervisor.
Yes, it does include those. Yes.
The Deputy Attorney General did ask you a marijuana question concerning your use on the night in question, and that was mentioned in your psychological evaluation. Are you still currently using marijuana?
No, not at all.
You estimated that 25 to 30% of your take-home income was being devoted to probation-related tasks prior. What's your current take-home income devoted to probation now that it's being reduced?
Percentage-wise, yes, it's diminished quite a bit. So from 52 minimum tests to $3,200 a piece, so that's 32.
So it's not hitting you as hard.
No, like below 10, maybe 10% or less than that.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Hi, Abigail Ortega.
I did that.
Okay, thank you.
There's a phone.
So thank you for your testimony today. A lot of my questions were answered inside of that. Just had a question. There was inside of the psych eval a recommendation for like an assertiveness training versus like anger management. Just wanted to know if you had any thing to add about that.
I was trying to look for assertiveness courses because that's kind of what they had suggested verbally, and I couldn't find like a course for that or training per se. So I opted for I might have included in the packet somewhere like all the titles of workbooks I got, some on trauma, the one it's called.
I'm actually going to stop you for just a second. We had a board member walk out. He has to be present for all of the testimony. So if we could just go off the record for just a moment, off the record, and we're just going to hold that and have you answer that question once he returns, please.
Okay.
It'll just hopefully be a moment. All right, as soon as our court reporter tells me she's ready. All right, we are back on the record. All right, we are back on the record after just a brief break. And Mr. Guevara, I just want to remind you that even though we took a break, you are still under oath.
Very good.
All right, there was a question that was asked of you, and I'm going to just ask that the question be repeated and to allow the petitioner to answer the question.
Please.
Oh, sure. So Abigail,
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
okay, question about the assertiveness training that was recommended,
Yeah.
the psychological evaluation.
Mhm. Yes, and as I was saying, I had researched courses to take, and I couldn't really find a lot of resource for that, or it was a huge scheduling issue where they're not fully available. So I opted for it's called the Assertiveness Workbook. I cited it in there with the author, and I haven't really touched it yet. That's on the pile of books that I want to work through. So right now I was doing like an AA workbook and a life in trauma book. So
Okay,
yes, that is a goal.
thank you. And then I heard you say that you want to remain sober in the future, now and in the future, and that being in places like growing up where there was a lot of drinking had an impact on you. And so how do you conduct yourself in places where there is drinking?
Yeah. And so in the Psyche Valid includes my sister is an alcohol rep. So I have hung out with her at bars, and she is not a protector, but another person who holds me accountable. So I was going to bars with her while on probation, talking with bartenders and telling them how I had a DUI and I was on probation, and that's why I'm asking for mocktails and stuff. But when I was anything social is, I mean, especially during COVID, but people ask for drinks or if I want to drink. No, I don't drink. And it's like a social experiment to see how everyone responds and how okay it is, and it's not awkward at all. Even including like dating, because I do have my girlfriend here today as a witness, did not involve alcohol. So that kind of flexing those experiences of having sober activities where before maybe I also used alcohol to feel comfortable. But like you said, in areas where alcohol is present, how do I manage? Telling people I don't drink, and everyone has honored that to this point. So, and also if all my friends know that I'm on probation and I don't drink. And so is this okay? They check in with me. And that was part of what I presented that, a lot of my friends check in with me. Are you okay? Do you want anything non-alcoholic? So we actually have people who plan with me about how we can make me feel comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Eleanor Uribe, licensed clinical social worker. Just kind of to dovetail on that, the assertiveness training, that might be something you can talk with your therapist about, even
So,
though,
I'm just going to remind you, this is just your time to ask questions,
Sorry.
please. Yes.
okay. Let's see. No further questions.
Thank you.
All right, and to my left?
Good morning. Thanks for being here, Wendy Strack,
Mhm.
public member. I just have one question. You mentioned a couple of times, you used the word, you had some shame associated with the incident itself. So I'm wondering if you could kind of share where you are in your journey with that.
So in the beginning, immediate feelings of shame is kind of related to the fear of loss of something valuable to me, which was my career as a mental health professional that I've been dreaming of for decades since I was very young. So it kind of opened up conversations of youthful feeling of not being good enough. So in more than one therapeutic environment, like through the trainings, this came up as well. Like this is a very youthful memory, like, you know, so I think exploring my sense of worth and value has come up quite a bit. I think separate to that, but healthy is imposter syndrome, like, and that means that I'm always checking in about is what I'm doing correct? How can I adjust it or improve something? So I think the shame factor is also accepting what's happened and using it as a learning experience. Because in my original write-up for this presentation, I had included few things are fairly cut and dry. So a fork in the road is a fork in the road. There's two options. It's either you drink again and run the risk of losing something and being here or something worse happening, or you don't. So I think it crystallized and was very clear to me from the beginning what my motivations were, because I do want to be a mental health professional for for the future. So I think I used it as a motivator quite a bit.
Do you think you have made, how would you describe your progress along that? Where are you in that journey?
Of all of what I said?
Well, no, I just mean with, I mean, because you talked a lot about what it means and your motivation, but is it something that you think you've come to terms with, or is it something that you still struggle with?
I think when we go, what was really nice was, again, step 3 of AA helps kind of encapsulate not being in control of everything and still feeling comfortable with that. So I don't need to be perfect. My ideals and goals are valuable and commendable. I think that's not the right word. Where I am with it, sorry, I have to like re-ask the question myself. I feel like I'm in a good direct. Can you ask it one more time? I'm sorry, I got lost.
But no, I think you're in the right, you're in the right space.
Yeah.
It's kind of, how do you feel about where you are with it? Do you feel like you still have a lot more progress to make, or you feel like you've made good progress? I guess is just kind of where I'm.
So good progress, yes. It was very liberating to feel not in control of everything, while at the same time knowing that I am doing a lot to progress and be more proficient. It's in one or two of the letters. I mean, these are heartfelt letters. I told everyone how moving it was. That's part of the great experience I've had. How excited I am about all of this, like the professional development of and this has been a motivation forever about, I'm uncomfortable talking to this person. Why? How can I make it better? And and so that has continued to becoming wanting to be a therapist and working with people with trauma, substance abuse, anxiety, PTSD. And so that kind of continued growth is just, I'm excited. So like I'm saying, doing the brain spotting, EMDR. I have a few kind of mentor therapists. One of them was a reference letter. And she's been a trauma therapist for 25 years. So we meet for like kind of skill building meetings, just so I can like kind of learn from her about what to do next. So I think next thing is to focus on dissociation, because that was yep. So I feel good.
Thank you. And thanks for being here and sharing your
I
journey.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, John Sovak, LMFT. And before we begin, I just want to know which pronouns you would like me to use for you.
He and him is fine.
Thank you, Mr. Guevara. I have a question about your quarterly reports. I noticed, it's come to my attention that in your quarterly reports, the question, in this quarter, were you on criminal probation? You have answered no. And so I'm confused. Are you currently on criminal probation or not? One I have up right now is 175 in the tag.
Thank you. Okay, I see what you mean. I'm trying to look for my police report that says the date.
So it won't be on your police report, it'll be on your conviction document.
That's what I meant,
Yes.
so I apologize. Let me actually look. Good question. Thank you for your patience. So on AGO 125, the date is from August 27th, 2022. And so placed on sentence for 3 years. So that would be August 27, 2023. So I guess yes, I still am on criminal probation.
Okay, I'm just curious why you answered no on your quarterly reports then.
Good question. Maybe that is an error on my part. That is an
Oh,
error.
I'm
So
just on multiple quarterly
yes,
reports.
yeah, pretty much every one. So I don't have a good answer for that, except I said no when I should have said yes.
Okay, thank you. Another question too, and this was brought up a little bit earlier as a question. It has to do with this reflection in the psych eval about once this is all over, you want to continue, you might continue drinking.
Yeah.
And that psych eval was done in the beginning of this process around 2021. You then signed your stipulated agreement in 2021 as well. And in that, it talks about no use. So I'm personally having a challenge between understanding these two approaches within a very short time, and then how philosophically that has changed for you in just a few years.
Yes. So first, the first thing you commented was in the psych eval where it was brought up that was contemplating drinking in the future. And then in the board stipulated settlement, it said no drinking, my plan forevermore. Is that what we were saying?
During the term of this probation, and you signed and agreed to that. So I'm just, this idea of like, I'm agreeing to these terms not to drink, but I've talked openly in my eval, which was just a very short time before that signing, that once this is all done, I may continue drinking again.
And
So I
so-
just want to follow through with that on you.
Yeah, and so those timeframes are different where not drinking during the program, being on probation, right? So meeting all stipulated settlement requirements. In the psych eval, in the psych eval, when we read it, you can see it. I was using this as an opportunity to really explore my experience and my state of mind. So there is a lot of, distraught feeling in there, coupled with a lot of honesty about my use history. So I was being very fully throated honest with that during the psych eval because I wanted the maximum benefit. I've actually been very curious about what a diagnosis would come from something like that. So I thought this was a good opportunity. From that psych eval till now, which is not a full 2.5 years, as I cited, what was stark and different, and I only started doing step work after that. I wasn't working on the steps actively for the first year because I was still just managing more. And so this second year I had more comfort zone to explore that stuff. So through that process and being more engaged with people in AA, including one of the reference letter writers, that's where, in reading the psyche value as well recently, how different a state of mind I am from now to then. Like I don't feel those ups and downs to such extremes. I feel, like I said, more even keel, stable even, we could say. So and being around a lot more people who are sober or experiencing sobriety and exploring it. Even my sister's boyfriend has not had alcohol for over a year, and he is a bar manager. And we talk about it. Even yesterday, he brought it up because he knew I was coming here, how good he feels. So I think celebrating what feels good is, talking with my sponsor as well, like how nice, like it's just very different. The motivations are different. So to drink is one motivation, to not drink has all these other advantages that just stick out. So I've had a lot of time to experience that. So it's not like someone told me this is what to expect. Yeah, my state of mind has transitioned quite a bit, I would say.
Okay. And then one final question. You've talked about your sobriety plan. I would be curious if you also have a relapse plan in place?
And I haven't talked to my sponsor about that as much. Exploring that in AA meetings has been a subject that I've brought up, like engaged in with people. But that is a good point. I haven't really, I talk about is contingencies, where how do we prevent it from happening? But the actual occurrence of relapsing, I haven't explored as much. So that can be a good thing to focus on now more.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Max Disposti, and no further questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Susan Friedman, public member. Thank you very, very much for being here today and sharing your journey. I have one quick question, and that is, I think you mentioned that you recently purchased a motorcycle and that was part of your support. Did you mean the freedom of riding or the camaraderie with other motorcycles? What did you mean by that as part of your support?
Yeah, I've had my motorcycle license for many years, but I never bought a bike. And so I talk about it with people who do ride. We always talk about, we'll go riding together. And when someone, a good friend said, get your license, I've got mine, we can ride together. I ended up doing the safety course, and within 2 weeks I bought a motorcycle. One of my friends is a motorcycle and safety instructor and helped me pick it up. And then since then, that friend of mine that originally would ride with me, one of his friends is in a couple motorcycle clubs. And so every few weeks I get a prompt about a ride. So I went, is it 3 Sundays ago for 3 hours, 150 miles with like 30 people. So it was just really nice. Yep. So yes, it is like a group activity. So yeah.
Thank you very much. I have no other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Annette Walker, Public Board Member. I have 2 quick follow-up questions for you. I appreciate your testimony this morning. The first is you referenced your psych eval, a specific page number in Exhibit 4. Would you mind repeating that? All I heard was 8.
It's going to be in the front.
And I want to make sure that I take that into
I
consideration.
think we were referencing the page that cites diagnoses, and that is AGO 38. 38.
Thank
correct.
you.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Mhm.
And then my next question is, you briefly touched upon your why, or in other words, what the effect of your petition for early termination of probation would be. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Just elaborate just a little bit about your why now.
That motivates the request for petition of early termination?
Correct.
Okay. So I wrote it down so I would have that there. It was kind of built into the comment for critique and suggestion, where in working with 2 therapists over the last 2 years, the psych eval plus attending all the meetings, engaging a lot of friends in this process. My mom and family members all know, so a few of them made letters. I feel there's a lot of parallel processes co-occurring, so in parallel, where they're all being able to move forward on their own, but in whole are a good supportive group of activities and areas I can grow and continue to pursue. And so with those structures in place, it's about, I had cited intrinsic motivation plus structure and support. And so when we talk about what structures are in place, the personal, peer, professional, substance, AA, accountability measures, right? So all these support little bubbles. The professional development while also working with therapists, working on internal work, coupling all those together and having those existing things that I do want to continue, that is personal growth that would continue past early termination of probation requirements. So with those there, that's kind of where we would want to be in 2 years and 8 months as well. So which would be the 5 years of probation. So I feel that threshold that I see the board like wanting to see that is in place, that is stable and of scope to really promote professional growth and safety to the public, because that's why we're here. Yes, for my benefit, but also for the safety of the public. Those things, those measures and countermeasures are in place. So that's what motivates me to come here and present that as a all-encompassing packet of information to request early termination.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much.
All right, any additional questions from our board members? Ms. Crawford, I'll give you one last opportunity if you have any brief questions.
I do, Your Honor. Mr. Guevara, I wanted to follow up on Board Member Sovic's question regarding the quarterly report and the probation status. When I asked you this morning if you were on probation, you said you believed you were, and then looked through some documents and confirmed that you in fact were. So why did you believe at the time of filing your petition that you were not on probation? And I'm referring to AGO 16, which is your petition packet that asks.
And that's where I probably need to take ownership of not doing due diligence of reading my the court kind of discharge paperwork of my probation standards or timelines and everything. So, because here it does say, the court date was August 27th, 2020, and the math is that it would be through August 27th, 2023. So that is a big faux pas error on my part, I would say. Not purposeful,
Okay.
but an error.
And my point of clarification was when I asked you the question, you said you were on probation, and that was before you referred to your notes. So why did you believe you were on probation, but when you filled out your petition, you marked no, that you weren't on probation?
I had requested this probationary hearing in May, because my 2-year anniversary was April 26th. And so I had worked on the packet and turned it in the day of the 26th, which was a deadline. And now that I've had an extra 4 months to prepare, go over review notes, really kind of have an opportunity to really go through everything. I think I had read this a lot more and had more correct information at my disposal.
So referring you again to AGO, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I said 16, it's 17. And I'm looking at number 23, where it says, are you currently under any sentence for any criminal offense? You mark no. When you did review your documents after filing this petition and, noted for yourself that you were in fact on probation, did you recall this bold portion in number 23 that says you're actually not qualified to petition for a modification or early termination if you are on probation?
I think I did. This was probably somewhere where I felt kind of nauseous and sick when I saw this one. I'm kind of on probation, parole, and or required to register pursuant. So under sentence for any criminal offense, when kind of what I took under sentence was like, is something coming up again, like a new criminal charge? So are you currently under sentence for any criminal offense? So yeah, maybe I misread that.
Did you see that question as a different question from your regular quarterly reports? And
Well, I said, sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry.
so I'm wondering if you saw that as a different question than what you'd been answering under your quarterly reports, where it says, in this quarter, were you on criminal probation?
And I think Mr. Sovek commented that I had said no on both of those. So I think that is the discrepancy we're exploring, that I misidentified and misdocumented.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
All right, with regards to any further testimony that you would like to add?
Only that, besides that last bit that made me feel uncomfortable, thank you so much for the opportunity to present.
Right, I will, in closing remarks, ask the Deputy Attorney General to address this issue to the board with regards to the issue of Mr. Guevara still being on criminal probation, and the board, the people's position with regards to his eligibility for early termination of probation as a result of that. But before that, I understand you've mentioned a few times that you have witnesses here today.
Yes.
Did you intend to have those witnesses speak to or testify to the board?
That was the hope.
Okay,
Or the-
so the board has 3 petitions today. You are our first one, and they have to still deliberate in closed session. So we have time, but it will have to be brief. And looks like I have a question from a board member.
I do. I have a question based upon the Deputy Attorney General's question on the active probation.
Yes.
Sir, if you are ineligible for termination of probation, did you wish the board to consider any other form of modification?
It goes back to the original one of poor sleep related to checking in for testing, which has just been a physical drain.
Okay.
Physically, it's been very deleterious, I would say.
So is that a yes?
That's a yes. So
Okay.
that would be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so if you do have witnesses, I'm going to ask you to please call your first witness. And please.
My sponsor, Dan Larson.
All right, Mr. Larson, if you would please come up, I will swear you in. And Mr. Guevara, you can pull up a chair next to your witness.
Your Honor, if I may interject, I think what you noted about this issue is an important one that we may need to address before further information is taken and more board time is taken up, if in fact the board cannot consider this petition.
So are you prepared to address the board with regards to this issue?
I can give the board as much information as I can, and that is reference to the regulations that indicate that a petition cannot be considered while an individual is on probation.
Okay, what is the regulation number?
It is I'm
Mr.
sorry, it's a
Larson, you can
statute.
just go ahead and have a seat. She's just going to give us that, and then we're going to need to just take a break in just a moment, but go ahead and please. Counsel.
I misspoke. It's a statute. It's the board statute 4990.30, subsection. Just had it, excuse me. Subsection L. It states no petition shall be considered while the petitioner is under sentence for any criminal offense, including any period during which the petitioner is on court-imposed probation or parole.
All right. All right, here, we're going to need to just take a break. I want the board members to have an opportunity to take a look at this statute. And so let's break for 5 minutes, come back at 11 o'clock. We'll come back on the record, and then we'll have to decide if the board doesn't have jurisdiction to actually hear this matter, it shouldn't have been set. And the board can actually consider the evidence or render a decision in this case. So let's go off the record. Everybody, please be back at 11 o'clock. I want to give the board members an opportunity to take a look at this statute. Off the record. Thank you. We are back on the record. All right, we're going to, the board members have had an opportunity to take a look at the statute that was cited with regards to the jurisdiction to hear a petition while petitioner is still on criminal probation. I'm going to give you some time off the record to speak to Ms. Crawford with regards to how you want to proceed with regards to this petition, whether or not you want to withdraw the petition from the board's consideration, or whether or not you want the board to render a decision with regards to this jurisdictional issue. So if Ms. Crawford, if you and Ms. Crawford could just spend a few minutes talking about that, those options, I will allow you to do so for 5 minutes, and then come back and tell the board how you would like to proceed. All right?
Thank you. Yes.
All right, off the record. All right, we're back on the record. And Mr. Guevara, have you decided how you would like to proceed?
Yes, I think in the best interest of what was discussed, I have to revoke my petition.
So you don't have to do anything.
No,
You have
well,
a choice. You
yeah,
can,
in the best interest of options discussed. So I just feel really sorry for taking up everyone's time, and I apologize for the oversight.
so you are choosing to withdraw your petition?
Withdraw my petition, yeah.
All right. And so as a result of the withdrawal of the petition, we will want you to submit something in writing to the board, also withdrawing the petition. You understand that you have the right to submit this matter to the board for a decision. Do you understand that?
Yeah, and just seeing kind of what limitations and what was cited, it doesn't seem, I mean, it seems more efficacious to choose to withdraw my petition.
All right. And I will ask that by tomorrow, if you would please submit something in writing to the board. So there's a written record that you have withdrawn your petition for the board's consideration. No decision will be issued in this case. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand, Judge. Thank you.
All right. Anything further?
No, that's it. So again, sorry for wasting everyone's time.
Ms. Crawford, anything further? All right. Then the matter is closed. We are up the record.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You're free to go. Do we want to call?
Okay. Based on the time, I think what we're going to do is break for lunch and then come back and hear the other two cases. So we'll be back at, we'll call it 11:10. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the August 17th Board of Behavioral Sciences petition hearings.
I'm Chris Jones, the board chair, and we are going to continue with our next petition case. So Judge.
Right, our next petition is a petition for reduction of penalty by Lisa Lipton. Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks. Oh, it's officially afternoon. Good afternoon. In just a moment here, we're going to go on the record. I will announce the case. I will explain how the hearing is going to proceed. And then if anyone has any questions, you can ask me at that time. All right? Okay, let's make sure your microphone is on.
There's a green light. Is it on?
That means it's on. Yes. Okay. All right. All right, we are on the record. Good afternoon. We are on the record. It is August 17th, 2023. In the matter of the petition for reduction of penalty by Lisa Lipton, AKA also known as Lisa Weitz Lipton. This matter is being heard before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California. This is OAH case number 2023-070507. Board case number 200-202-000-140. My name is Marcy Larson. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, presiding over the matter this afternoon with the board. The board has previously identified themselves for the record, and there is a quorum present. Will the Deputy Attorney General please state your appearance for the record?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California.
All right, and Ms. Lipton, if you would just announce yourself for the record as well.
Lisa Lipton?
All right, and Ms. Lipton, you're representing yourself today, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and you understand you could have had an attorney represent you at your own expense?
Yes.
And you're choosing to proceed on your own behalf?
Yes.
All right. So before we get started, just a few brief explanations with regards to how the hearing will proceed. The board is concerned about hearing from you about your rehabilitation since your license was disciplined. The Deputy Attorney General will present the petition package and provide the board a brief overview of the history of discipline of your license. After that, I will swear you in, and you can provide testimony to the board concerning your rehabilitation efforts since your license was disciplined. The board members have the benefit of your petition package and all the documents and statements that you provided in support of that petition, so you don't have to repeat anything that's in the petition, but if there are things that you want to highlight for the board members, you feel free to do so. After you provide testimony, Ms. Crawford will have an opportunity to question you. You may object to any question she asks of you, but you must have a reason not to answer the question, a legal reason. So if you have an objection to a question, just please tell me. I'll find out why you're objecting, and then I'll make a decision on whether or not you're required to answer the question. After Ms. Crawford is done questioning you, then I will ask our board members if they have any questions for you. And the same rules apply. You can object to a question that a board member asks of you, but you must, again, tell me that you have an objection, and then I'll make a decision about that. After the board members are done questioning you, I will ask Ms. Crawford one more time if she has any questions, and I will make sure you have the last word. After all of the evidence has been presented, I will ask both you and Ms. Crawford if you have any closing remarks. And then once the matter is submitted, the record will be closed, and this afternoon, the board will be going into closed session to deliberate. You will receive a decision sometime in the future. During the proceeding, I cannot give any legal advice, but if you have any questions about the procedures, please ask me, and if I can answer the question, I will. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You're a little difficult to hear, so I want to just make sure, yes, you're nice and close to that microphone when you speak.
Okay, is that better?
Much better.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Any questions for me?
No questions.
All right, then Ms. Crawford, if you would please proceed with regards to the history of this matter and identify the exhibits for the board.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the outset, I am appearing on behalf of the Attorney General pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 in order to assist the board in fact-finding. A background of this case: on May 13th, 2020, a statement of issues was filed, and on April 13th of 2021, the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order was adopted by the board. That became effective May 13th of 2021. The petitioner was placed on 3 years probation, and her probation is set to terminate on May 13th of 2024. 10 months remain on her probation term. The statement of issues was filed because the petitioner was convicted of a federal charge of conspiracy to commit mail, bank, or wire fraud. The circumstances of the conviction were that between January of 2005 and August of 2008, the petitioner was involved in a mortgage fraud conspiracy scheme of preparing, collecting, providing loan documents, and straw purchases for fraudulent real property loans and obtaining kickbacks from financed mortgage funds. Through her mortgage company, she induced lenders to fund fraudulently obtained residential mortgage loans. She is compliant in all aspects of her probation. However, because petitioner has chosen to work in an administrative capacity during her probation period, there's no compliance information for this board to consider relating to the supervision of her clinical practice, her billing system, or audits of a billing system. I have 5 exhibits, Your Honor, that I would like to mark and introduce. Unfortunately, my exhibit list is missing a number, so it looks like there's 4. There's actually 5. The first is the memo to the board from the probation analyst relating to the petitioner's compliance with probation. I would like a stipulation to introduce that at this time.
All right. Any objection to Exhibit 1?
No.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
2 is the certification of license history for this petitioner. I'd like to mark and introduce.
Ms. Lipton, any objection to Exhibit 2?
No.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
What should be marked as Exhibit 3 is the notification of hearing to the petitioner of today's hearing date.
Any objection to the notice of hearing?
No.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
What should be Exhibit 4 is the petition for early termination or modification of probation and attachments in support. We'd like to introduce that subject to administrative hearsay.
All right. So council has asked that Exhibit 4, the contents of Exhibit 4 be admitted, but made an objection with regards to hearsay. So typically in a court proceeding, hearsay, which is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth, and meaning an out-of-court statement by somebody who's not here testifying, cannot be considered. But for purposes of an administrative hearing, the board can consider hearsay if it supplements or explains other evidence. So to the extent that there are statements by third parties that are not testifying today, any documents that contain that information will be considered for that purpose by the board. But anything that's direct statements from you come in as direct evidence. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. So with that explanation, do you have any objection to Exhibit 4?
No.
All right. Exhibit 4 is admitted.
And what should be marked as Exhibit 5 is a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, as well as a statement of issues in the underlying case. Would like to mark and introduce that at this time.
All right. Any objection to Exhibit 5?
No.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
Your Honor, I don't have any additional witnesses or evidence.
All right, then, Ms. Lipton, now is going to be your opportunity to testify. The first thing I need to do is swear you in. So if you please rise. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please have a seat. And please state and spell your name for the record.
Lisa, Lisa, Lipton, Lipton.
All right, you may begin.
Okay. I hope that I will be quick.
All right, so I see that you're going to be reading from something, correct?
Yes.
So typically when we read faster than we normally speak. So I'm just going to ask you to be mindful of that and read very slowly, just so we can make sure we can hear you and to ensure that our court reporter can also take down what you're saying, all right?
Absolutely. And if I am reading too fast, please slow me down.
I assure you I will.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So first, I want to thank the board for giving me the ability to request for early termination of my probation period as an LMFT. I've spoken very collaboratively with my enforcement contact, and we've gone through the packet and through all of my probationary period. She has been extremely concise with me on everything that I'm doing in order to meet those. So I do appreciate that. Initially and off the bat, I just want to say that During the period of time between 2005 and 8, I was responsible for the actions during that conspiracy. I was charged and convicted, and as the Attorney General stated, you have copies of that information. As a result of the charge and conviction, I was sentenced and I served time. I was released and completed probation. The sentencing federal judge released me from probation approximately 2 years early. I've included the early termination document from the judge. It's the packet that you already have for your review. In regard to the rehabilitation efforts that I've made, I'd like to take a moment to give a bit of information about the time prior to being charged and convicted, also which was prior to my application with the board. Although the actions that the charges were based on ended in 2008, I was not charged until 2013. I was the last of 12 people in this conspiracy. I only knew or interacted with 2. In 2007, I moved from Texas to California. My daughter was working out here, and I completed and had already removed myself from the field. I went back to school and attained first a bachelor's in psychology and then my master's. I was halfway through my doctorate at the time that the charge and conviction took place. I say this because I was aware long before I had any idea that I would be charged or convicted that in the climate of the industry that I was in and my participation, it made me uncomfortable. It made me feel shame and was not something I wanted continued involvement in. I began changing my life and rehabilitation before there were ever consequences and before any licensing process took place. Since then, I've completed my doctorate as well. While incarcerated, I worked with the psychologist and I was involved in every one of the mental health programming courses. These were submitted actually upon application with the board. Although these courses were basic and not required, I felt that my unique background in the mental health field and also my own accountability, being with women who were there incarcerated, internalizing their input to me and from me was very corrective. I have letters from several of the women in this packet who were incarcerated with me, discussing the impact that I had on their correctional experience and reintegration into the community. Again, I received a parallel correctional experience while being able to help and be helped at the same time. Prior to incarceration and prior to ever having the charges and convictions, and after the events leading to incarceration, I began therapy with a therapist who did not know me while in Texas during the events of this conviction. I saw her weekly for 4 years prior to incarceration. I was able to meet with her throughout my incarceration via video. And then immediately within 1 month of release, I began seeing her and continue to see her to this day. On top of my psychologist, Dr. Jessica Herzog, I had to attain a therapist that did not know me prior to the probation terms of this agreement. I have seen and have documentation from Dr. Karen Colosi. She did recommend that I terminate therapy, which I have been in with her since 2021 and have not terminated. I have provided the psychotherapy information sheet from her where she states, I recommend without reservation petitioner's probation be terminated early. Although I do not have the psychological evaluation from the psychologist that the board recommended and required, I understand the board does have a copy. And of this, my clinician, Dr. Colosi, stated that the results were very similar to what she is finding within the confines of our therapeutic relationship. She only disclosed this And she disclosed it in the clinical perspective of letting me know that if there were red flags from the evaluation, she wanted to make sure we would address those during our therapeutic sessions. Of course, I have completed everything that has been required from the board as criteria to remain on probation with no exceptions. In the years that followed my exit from the mortgage business, through the therapeutic process and deep introspective reflection, I explored knowing that everyone who's in survival mode does not break the law as I did. My ego was not sturdy at the time. I had not explored the effects and moved through the repercussions of my early childhood trauma in regard to decision-making. I can tell you today that I would not make the same decisions I made 16 years ago, which is approximately when these events happened. I have the ability to recognize now when I feel that I'm in survival mode and to reality test and figure out an appropriate process to move forward. In an effort to reintegrate and rehabilitate of my own volition, I chose to work with a population that is 100% formerly incarcerated. In a program contracted with Department of Mental Health for the Assembly Bill 109. This bill is a California bill that allows for incarcerated individuals who are diagnosed with mental health, co-occurring, and substance use to attain treatment in lieu of being incarcerated. Because when I was incarcerated, I saw the shame and guilt of the population who were suffering with co-occurring mental health and substance use issues, and it was not a corrective experience. It was not being addressed while incarcerated. I deliberately made a conscious decision to make my own experience, which I disclose with the client population I work with, as well as students that I teach at the master's and doctoral level, and be an example of working through barriers with a history of justice involvement. I have been doing this in various positions, from intern to team lead of a multidisciplinary team to clinical director currently in 2 programs, and I am currently teaching master's and doctoral students. I have taken over 100 CEUs from legal, ethical, to meet the newest modalities of clinical interventions. I've attended 2 evolution of psychotherapy conferences, which consist of lectures and courses, sessions, etc., from the living, leading psychological theorist today. This is to say that it is not just the mandated criteria that motivated me to continue learning. It's my joy to continue growth in my chosen profession. Within the confines of education and psychology and psychotherapy, I found that the insight I had beginning the journey going back to school in 2007 and 2008, I'm able to see that the adverse childhood experience I worked so hard to address in therapy were an internal driving force in survival throughout my life. As a result of addressing my own implicit thought patterns, I am aware that I am no longer in survival mode, and I am able to mindfully make decisions after methodically going through and over my options. I'm almost done. Regarding my record, I've been asked often while going through this if I'm going to expunge my record. It's a federal conviction. There is no expungement or sealing of that record, unless the President of the United States pardons me. And I will have to live with these charges as part of the record for the rest of my life. If I'm being frank, I do not feel that that's a bad thing. And let me be clear that if I could get a pardon, I would. However, and regardless, I self-disclose often when I'm in a situation with clients when it's not gratuitous. And I find that it's beneficial to the population that I work with, and it lends hope to an often hopeless population. I have provided letters from my direct supervisor, a coworker who's also a clinical director, clinical staff members that have promoted to facilities that no longer work with me. I have provided the board with various programs that I have researched in regard to record keeping, billing, and utilization review. Again, I'm not planning to go into private practice currently, and the organizations that I'm working with already have in place documentation systems, billing departments, and utilization review departments. However, in the event that things change in the future, I am prepared to make decisions that have oversight in these main areas. With respect to why I'm requesting early termination of probation, I've been working as a clinical director from the time, bless you, from the time I attained my license. Prior, I was with a supervisor and seeing clients attaining my hours. I have not been able to see clients individually and currently work in an administrative capacity for the most part. This is due to the fact that my restricted licensure is not acceptable to Medi-Cal or private insurance companies, the ones generally used by the clients at either program. I would like to be able to practice with clients and maintain the positions with one or both organizations that I work with, and go forward, both would like me to have an individual caseload. I also want to say that when I chose this field at 42 years old and went back to school, beginning this journey, I chose for once what I wanted to do, which was to be in a helping profession. I was working in fields throughout my life due to survival needs. I was talented and capable and able to do that for the vast majority of my life and provide for my family. I will be 60 in less than a year. My charge was from actions 16 to 18 years ago. I would like the opportunity at this stage of my life to do what I have worked so hard to find fulfillment in and contribute in the profession I have chosen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Crawford, any questions for Ms. Lipton?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Lipton, you've told us that the conduct that you committed between 2005 and 2008 was in large part based on that you were in survival mode. Can you explain why being in such a state resulted in you committing these crimes?
I can. So I'll make this brief and hope you understand. In early childhood, I had multiple traumas, and I don't mind disclosing, my father was killed when I was 5. That year, when I was 6, my mother was raped. I was held at gunpoint while my 2 siblings were there, and I was threatened if I said anything, made any noise, that they would be killed. So that was sort of a baseline for me in survival. At the time of these crimes, I was involved from the mortgage end of it, doing loans for somebody who created this conspiracy. I own that I was involved. That is not in dispute. My husband at the time, a C7 quadriplegic, had what was called a Medtronic baclofen pump. That was for his survival. It was malfunctioning. It causes people with quadriplegia to have spasms. So rather than being able to sit in a chair, when they're spasming, they can't. They will fall out of a chair. They may, they pretty much become stuck in their own body. And I was earning money. I was the one paying all of the bills. This Medtronic pump was $72,000 just for the Medtronic baclofen pump. It's an interthecal device that goes into the spinal cord to put baclofen into the part of the spinal cord that's functioning where the injury level is. He was C7. There was no scholarship donation. There were no options for him. and he was quite suicidal. I continued working and felt that the survival of myself and my family was at hand. Although going back on that, I do not believe I would do that again. I certainly wouldn't do it now. But at the time, it recapitulated that survival instinct that either I do this or my family dies. That's the answer of why I felt survival.
Right. And what finally, you said that you weren't charged till 2013. So what, did you stop these activities on your own in 2008?
I did.
And what compelled you to stop?
There were two things. The climate of the industry was unfortunately very much like what it is that I was involved in generally. That's when you saw Countrywide going out of business, Washington Mutual. It was an ugly, dysregulated situation. I actually took all of my files to an attorney at the time and said, these things are going on. These things are, not legitimately what I want to be involved in. And I want you to go through those and speak to the authorities and see what's, out there with these people that I've done this business with. What can I do? And he did for about a year. It cost me, I want to say $18,000 at the time for him to do this. There was nothing. And I had at the time a daughter that was working out here. And I just wanted to stop. It wasn't something I could continue doing. It was ethically against everything I believed in. It was psychically disturbing, and I couldn't do it anymore. So I came out, and throughout my life, this is the truth, and I haven't thought about it till now, but when I was 18 years old, I wasn't a good student as a child. 18, I took 2 classes when I moved to the beach in the summer. And one of the classes was psychology. It was the only class I ever made a B in. And I was so excited that I made a B in that class. And I was, life happened. My parents directed me in other ways. And when I stopped, I thought that I enjoyed, that I loved. And I went back at 42, scared that everyone was going to be 18 years old in all these classes, but I did do it, and now have completed those 3 degrees.
So in 2008, were your husband's medical issues and financial concerns not as pressing on you?
They were resolved.
They were resolved.
They were resolved. He had the surgical procedure and the new intrathecal pump installed. He is since deceased and, in fact, did take his own life.
And when those issues resolved, do you attribute that as being a big factor in stopping what you were doing with the mortgage loans, the fraudulent activities, because you no longer had that pressing on you?
I stopped. Part of it was the survival need was gone, but before that, because he had that procedure in mid 2006, in 7, I had given everything to the attorney and stopped regardless. I did not want to be in that field. I could have continued in that field for the next many years. I certainly did not know that I would be indicted, 8 years later. I had no idea. So it was my own volition and my own internal process that just thought it was getting ugly and dirty, and that's why I left.
Switching gears to your probation, you were seeing 2 therapists simultaneously.
Yes.
And do you feel like you benefited from having 2 therapists?
I think I did. One was a therapist that was a solution-focused therapist, the one that I got from the board. The other is a psychoanalyst. And that helped me deal with, as I stated, that early childhood trauma and moving through that all of this time. So I was working sort of in two different modalities. One was solution-focused. What can I do right now? What can I recognize that's going on right now? One was, what was the root cause and where did all of this begin?
And where do you currently work?
I work for a program called TABS 109, which is Telecare's Department of Mental Health contract for Assembly Bill 109. And I work with Create Recovery, which is a substance use and mental health partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient program. I also am an adjunct professor at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology.
And you don't work in a clinical setting, you don't see patients?
No.
Okay. Why have you chosen to work in a non-clinical setting?
Well, they're clinical settings, but in my position as a clinical director, I am working with the clinicians, with staff, and I am reviewing documentation. I've done at this point, because I actually finished my master's before I was incarcerated. So I've done my 3,000 hours now about 3 times for the master's program because of the time frame and being incarcerated, and for the Board of Psychology. Because of the confines and billing restrictions, I cannot see individual clients clinically. The 2 settings I'm in bill private insurance companies and Medi-Cal. So in both situations, I am actually unable to see individual clients and bill, which is why I've chosen an administrative position. I also like teaching, so it's kind of part of it.
You're saying because you were placed on probation, you've got billing restrictions and therefore you're not able to see clients and bill for them?
Yes, so if, I don't know if you're aware, when you're on probation with the board, the insurance companies, including but not limited to Medi-Cal, consider that restricted licensure and you cannot bill.
But you could take cash patients.
I could.
Okay.
I work about 80 hours a week right now, and I don't know there's bandwidth for that.
Okay. Is it your intent to move that route and work with patients in a clinical setting where you're providing the services?
Both of the programs that I'm in would like me to have a caseload, not that I would be an individual practice, but at some point in the future, I'm not opposed. But in order to even do it in the settings I'm in, the probation is considered restricted and limited.
Okay. When did you become licensed by the Board of Psychology?
The Board of Psychology, I did not become licensed by the Board of Psychology. I became a psych associate, and I have since withdrawn that application or licensure.
So I'm just going to pull it up to make sure I'm referring to the right document. So I see in AGO 23, it says that there was a statement of issues against Lisa Lipton by the Board of Psychology.
It was for the psych associate,
Okay.
not the license.
Okay, for your registration.
For my registration, yes.
And when did you become licensed for your, or excuse me, when did you obtain your registration?
I don't know the answer to that. It was after they agreed to the stipulated settlement.
Okay.
What was that number? It could be in that document.
AGO 23.
I did let the board know my enforcement contact. I did know at the time that I did get that registration number. I didn't prepare. I don't know the answer to that honestly right now.
But they did file a statement of issues against your registration. And so what was the basis of them denying the registration initially?
I checked that where it asked you if you've ever been denied by any board. I did check that I was denied because my understanding through this process is I was denied, then it was reconsidered, and then I was issued my registration. So when I checked that, then it becomes a trickle down theory. They want to know, and I explained, I disclosed everything.
Okay.
Is why. The same reason that this board did, I believe.
And then you chose to surrender that registration.
I did.
And then did you get a different license through that board?
No, I did not. I chose to surrender it. I was on probation with 2 boards, and I was having a very difficult time keeping up with both sets of circumstances. So for example, the evaluation I did for this board was not acceptable to that board. So I had to do another evaluation. So that was about $17,000 between the 2. I had to see different psychologists. They didn't accept CEUs that I did for this board. And I've done over 100 CEUs. I had a circumstance of 6 months where I didn't have an enforcement contact there. I sent a document saying these are the CEUs I'm doing, but I didn't hear back until I got a new person. I still took them because I was afraid if I don't take them, I'm going to, be out of compliance. So I took them, and then they said those were not acceptable because nobody sent you an approval on the forms that you got those. So it became very cumbersome. And if I'm being honest, I was afraid that I was going to be out of compliance, not understanding, between the 2, how to keep up with it in that way. So I felt this was a really concise process with this board, with my enforcement contact. She kept me informed. She answered my questions, and I knew and felt secure in meeting the criteria as I went through it.
So because you were simultaneously on probation with the Board of Psychology and Board of Behavioral Sciences, you determined it was too cumbersome to be on probation with both and surrendered your registration?
I did.
Okay. With the Board of Psychology?
Yes.
Do you plan on petitioning to reinstate that registration or applying for a new license with the Board of Psychology?
I haven't made a plan for that. I think by doing that, I would have to wait 3 years anyway as part of what their normal process if you surrender. And I have no problem with that. It's not anything I'm thinking about. Honestly, I'm a doctor anyway.
What is your doctorate in?
So, applied clinical psychology.
And your current position, do you feel that's more in line with your doctorate?
I think it's both. Both degrees.
Okay. With psychology and behavioral science?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you provide some context for Dr. Anderson's letter, which is on AGO 29, because he addresses it to the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council?
Yes, absolutely. I had a grandchild who lives in Texas, and in Texas, it's an error. Okay, I think when he sent it to me, he must have used the letter that he wrote to that board. Their process is that they will look at your conviction prior to application. So you do the same thing, the fingerprint live scans, and they let you know if with what you've got in your record, they would even consider the licensure process. So I did that. Part of that was to get a letter from your, to get character letters. So you send 3 character letters and you do the live scan and fill out, it's not like an application for licensure, but a short application that you'd like them to review it. And that's what that was. And I think when he emailed that to me and I sent it to the board, he must have used the same format.
Okay, so this letter was originally intended for the Texas board?
Yes, it was. And I did ask him to write a letter for this, and I believe he thought he did, but he must have sent either that or not changed the title.
Okay. And the date on the letter is 2021.
Yeah, that I saw that when I was looking at the package.
You had asked him to write a letter more recent than that?
I
assume?
did. I mean, I could ask him to send it now. I just think it was an error.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the coursework that you took and what, how you benefited from that coursework?
Oh, sure. So I've taken multiple law and ethics courses, and I have taught mental health law. So concurrently doing those was reinforcing all of the information that's required in law and ethics, that piece of it that was required for the board, right? So I got current information because as I was stating, the courses that I took while I was in school were in 2011 and 12, I was incarcerated in between that time. So it was super informative to know that there were new laws and there were changes to the law and ethics guidelines. That was that piece of it. The other courses that I've taken were current modalities in treatment. They were changes in the DSM, for example. I took a course in understanding sort of the legal piece of where the beginnings were of law and ethics and informed consent, for example, starting with the Miranda laws, right? Things like that. I listened to Irv Yalom speak on group therapy, Otto Kernberg on borderline personality disorder, learning different modalities and processes for working with the populations that I work with. I also have taken a certificate course. I just actually got a thing while I was sitting here. I took a course called Major Depression in the Population, a Public Health Approach, which was an epidemiology of public depression from the Congo to civilized countries and how depression has affected all of us. And I utilized that when I am interacting with people from different cultures. And I do think that cultural economic component is important for me, because I've chosen to deal with people who are formerly incarcerated from every culture and class. So learning to be cognizant of what other people's experience is what's helped me in all of this education.
Why are you seeking early termination?
I would like to be able to fulfill my positions as the positions are written. Exceptions have been made for me, not having a caseload, not being able to bill. And I would like to work in the capacity that I've been hired to work in, and also interact and share my academic background and unique experiential model with the clients that are within this census I work with.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
All right, I'm now going to ask our board members if they have any questions, starting to my right with our chair. And just remember to please identify yourself before you ask the question.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Chris Jones. I'm the board chair, LEP member. I'm going to hold. I'm trying to formulate some questions and I don't want to waste time. So if you come back to me, is that okay? All right. Pass it off to my esteemed colleague, Kelly.
And just remember to please identify yourself first.
Kelly Renessinger, public member. Dr. Lipton, this incident in question occurred 16 to 18 years ago. You indicated your age was nearing your 60s. That would have placed you in your 40s. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you,
Before I went back to school at 42 is when these happened.
you cited as one of the bases for your actions in the crime that your husband was a quadriplegic and you needed a Medtronic pump, and that Medtronic pump was quite expensive. But in the court sentence, you were ordered to pay nearly $3.4 million in restitution. Is that correct?
Yes, that was not for me solely. That was for the entire conspirators.
And you paid nearly $42,000 in restitution.
I paid monthly.
You cited in your initial testimony the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, the ACEs study, as one of the influencers related to your prior crimes. And you indicated that you were in survival mode. But the ACEs study, first of all, it's not a prospective study.
No.
And the studies which point to propensity to criminality don't indicate anything about fraud.
You're right.
So just please remember to narrow your statements to questions to the doctor, please.
Ultimately, the board's central concern is public safety. In this case, it's interesting because this is not substance abuse. The crimes you committed were a breach of public trust. What can you offer to the board that would deem you safe to be in a position of trust again, given your prior actions?
I don't have the same thought process. And when you made the statement about the ACE, it's the implicit neurotransmission that goes on when you're working from your amygdala, which I was. I now have the ability to stop and utilize my prefrontal cortex and think before anything happens. And that's why I was referring to that. I've done a lot of work for that. As far as public safety is concerned, prior to and since that time in 2008, I have had nothing in record or conviction or to indicate a desire or willingness to do anything other than what's socially acceptable by law and the social normative acceptable responsibility.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lipton. We appreciate your testimony.
You're welcome.
Hi, how are you? Oh, no. Okay, let's see. Abigail Ortega, LCSW member. guess wanting to hear more about like you, right, and in your daily functioning, your daily work. How are you, like, are you aware of your triggers inside of like working, right, in the field, and how do you cope with stress so that you don't default, right, into the survival mechanisms?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I'm not so much triggered really anymore. And I can tell you that after being incarcerated, I did 4 years. You have a lot of time to think and to search internally, right? And I know what it feels like to operate from fight, flight, or freeze. Utilizing that amygdala just goes into action. I have not felt that since. I am in therapy every week, regardless, both right now. And I can tell you that I recognize I had a grandchild. I went to Texas for that. I was in Texas around all of my family. That used to be a trigger because of my life. I was, in a situation where they lived or died based on my actions. I did not have that same trigger response when I was there. I can't tell you that I won't. And if I do, I'm really cognizant of the feeling that comes up with that. And I have to stop myself and think and utilize my prefrontal cortex. Think about what's going on. Reality test. Is this survival? Is this not? And most times it's not.
Thank you. And what would you say, well, what is the the main takeaway for you from like this journey that you've been on? And I mean, it's been right 60-year journey, and so much has happened. Like, tell me about your main insights and like how it has informed your work.
Because I chose to work with a population who had experiences like mine to a degree, I feel that because I have an academic foundation plus the experiential model, and I have no shame in revealing that, it creates a space that's safe for somebody who has been incarcerated, who has had mental health issues or substance use issues, to know it's not the end for them because there was an arrest or a conviction, that they can go forward. And I think it's unique to have that experiential model. And I utilize that all of the time in what I do. I think that's my takeaway, is to know that we all have stuff. And if we take it and use it to be helpful and increase hopefulness in a population that's often hopeless, for me, that's fulfilling.
Okay. And then I also noticed, I think it's Jennifer Barrios.
I'm sorry?
Is it in one of the letters of recommendation, there's a woman, I think her name is Jennifer Barrios. She mentioned that she would provide peer supervision.
She did.
Oh, she did. Okay.
Yes.
Would
But she would on an ongoing basis.
Okay, because if you, right, if probation is lifting, you start seeing clients again, would it be peer supervision only? Like how would you get supervised?
So I have a very strong and close group of clinicians that I know through the field, and I would get peer supervision. I think as a licensed clinician, I don't need any more hours. I've had supervised hours, multiple thousands and thousands of hours, but I would continue doing peer supervision, case conceptualizations with all of the clinicians that I work with. And if I didn't have other clinicians that I worked with in order to conceptualize with and work on client cases with, I would seek that. And I did include in my petition package that I would continue on with that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW. So anyway, you know, mine was kind of similar as far as things that you've learned, and I think you've answered some of that. And the other thing was some more like accountability and people. You said that you have people that are close to you. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Well, I work in the organization. One of the organizations I work in has 4,000 staff. As a clinical director, there are multiple Department of Mental Health programs. Also, I am responsible to Department of Mental Health. I deal with clinicians in the Department of Mental Health as oversight on a regular basis. I would not stop ever having that relationship in order to, you know, conceptualize and to go over clients. I also provided, as far as you're talking about just oversight in general, that I would utilize like a utilization review company, right? That has doctors and clinicians to look at all of the documentation that I'm submitting. I looked at clinical note programs so that I would be responsible for having all of my clinical notes in a methodical order. And I teach as well. So often lots of the professors as well are psychologists and I think, and MFTs. And I would continue consulting with all of my peers.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to just check back in with the chair to see if he has his questions ready.
Yes, I do. Chris Jones, Chair and LEP member. I'm curious as to how you made the transition from finance to the healing arts. They're vastly different industries.
Absolutely. I really wanted to be as far away from that as I could. That was first. And like I said, when this was going on, I had this thought about literally the only class that I made a decent grade in and enjoyed and felt sturdy in. And I went back to school. I was afraid, but I did it. And there were lots of young people there, and I managed to get through it, you know, through 3 degrees. But that's why I feel good in that space, in this space, in the healing profession. And I think I'm effective.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No further questions.
All right, to my left.
Thank you. Some of the other board members have already asked my questions, so thank you for being here, and I'll let my colleagues continue.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. No questions.
Thank you.
Likewise, thank you for being here. Max Disposti, no questions. Thank you.
Susan Friedman, public member, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for sharing your journey.
Thank you.
Dr. Annette Walker, Public Board Member, appreciate your testimony. I don't want to pull up my notes because we've all read it, right? So I don't want to go back to that. So just for the sake of time and being efficient here, I'm going to ask you some questions that we all should know, okay. So, and I want to reference your probation with the 2 other boards. You mentioned that you were doing them simultaneously?
The board here and the Board of Psychology here. In Texas, that was just an inquiry
Mm.
as to whether they would allow me to even apply and practice there. They have a process that's a little different.
Okay. What were the years?
The years here, I think it was 2021 is when I got my license here, wait, we're in 23. October of 22 is when I got my license with the board here and passed the clinicals. And I never did take the tests. I only had applied for a reg number with the Board of Psychology. And that was 2021, the application. So there was a period, quite some period.
Fairly recent. So I'm a little confused. So were you on probation on both of those boards?
Yes, with both of the boards. I got on probation. I didn't get my license and then get on probation. That's it. It's because I disclosed from the beginning that I had, back in 2013, I disclosed, I just was indicted, and they put it on hold. When I got out of incarceration, I applied again and went in on probation. I was denied and then given probation. I had to fight to get that because I wasn't licensed yet. So this happened prior to licensure.
So you can understand why I'm kind of all
Oh,
over the
yeah,
place.
it's a little confusing.
So
It's a
you're no
different
longer on
case.
probation. You
Oh, are you talking about with the government on probation
I'm
or with the boards?
with the boards. You said
I am no longer, I'm on probation with this board.
that I know.
On the other board, I've withdrawn my license, my registration. As I was stating, it was too difficult
Okay.
to do both, and I didn't want to miss a beat.
So taking that action essentially stopped your probation in 2021 on the Texas board.
Yes, the Texas board, I was never on probation. I was never on anything. I just submitted something to see if they would allow me to practice in that state based on my history.
Okay, the history is a little confusing, but I think I follow you. That's why I'm glad I asked the question. So thank you for answering to the best of your ability in this moment. So you have 10 months remaining for this probation. On this
Yes.
one. Okay, and you've never applied for petition for early termination for, okay. So why at this time?
As I was saying, the two positions that I'm in, they are strongly both, we'll call it encouraging me, but they would really like me to meet the criteria of a clinical director as they see it in full. And part of that is having a caseload. And as I was saying with Medi-Cal and with private insurance, because my license is on probation, they will not allow for them to bill. It's considered restricted licensure, and they don't. I'm not part of the billing process. They're both big companies that have, departments that do all of that. But for me, that's why I would like to be able to serve in my positions in full. And so would my companies.
So I hear you. So for you then, would fulfilling the rest of your probation time, which is approximately 10 months, do you think it would benefit you to just continue with that? Because I understand what you're saying about your employer and employment, but for you, do you feel that you need this time, the addition to finish
On
it out?
probation?
Yes.
I don't. I don't. If I am, then, if that's how this comes out, I'm obviously willing to do it. I do not think I do. I've fulfilled this every step of the way. I've been super communicative with Amanda, my enforcement person. And I don't want to jeopardize having one or both of the positions that I'm in. And I really think, I know at least one of them is fairly, no offense, but they're, sort of not pleased with having to continue to accommodate me. And I do like what I do. I don't want to jeopardize that. And that's why I asked.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Limpton. No further questions.
Thank you.
It looks like we have one more question from a board member.
I was just going to ask if we could take a 5-minute break.
I think we're just about done. Can we wait 5 minutes or do we need to do it now? Yes, of course. We're going to take a 5-minute break. So off the record, everybody back in 5 minutes, please. We are back on the record. And Ms. Lipton, I want to remind you that even though we took a break, you are still under oath. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. I just want to check and make sure there's no additional questions from our board. No further questions from the Deputy Attorney General. Any further testimony, Ms. Lipton?
No.
All right, then we're going to go ahead and proceed with closing remarks. Any closing remarks, Ms. Crawford? Any closing remarks, Ms. Lipton?
No, thank you.
All right, then is the matter submitted for the board's consideration?
Yes.
Matter submitted?
Yes.
Matter submitted. Record is closed. We are off the record.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you so much. You are free to go. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our final petition case of the day.
Everything okay? No, there, look. Okay. Okay. Yes, we do. I will do it on the record.
I just want to say that we still have a quorum.
And I will establish that on the record. I will go ahead and just have the board members, once we go on the records, announce themselves one more time so we know that there's different board members for this particular hearing. Wait, do you want me to call the next case? Okay. All right. Our next in order is the petition for reduction of penalty of Chelsea Sybrandt. Is that correct? If you'd have a seat, please. All right, I want to make sure I can hear you. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. In just a moment, we're going to go on the record. As you know, you've been sitting in the audience, so you know some of these. So I'll be repeating myself a bit, but as soon as we go on the record, I will announce the case. I will have you and Ms. Crawford both announce yourself, and then I will explain how the hearing will proceed. And then if you have any questions, you can ask me at that time. All right?
Thank you.
All right, as soon as our court reporter tells me she is ready. Okay, on the record. Good afternoon. We are on the record. It is August 17th, 2023. In the matter of the petition for reduction of penalty by Chelsea Sybrandt. This matter is before the Board of Behavioral Science, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California. This is case number OAH 2023-070512. This is board case number 2002-017-002454. My name is Marcy Larson. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings presiding over the matter this afternoon. I will have the board members identify themselves for the record, starting to my right with our chair.
Chris Jones, Board Chair, LEP member.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW member.
Wendy Strack, public member.
John Sovak, LMFT.
Max, public member. Max Esposte.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Dr. Nat Walker, public member.
There is a quorum present. All right. May I please take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California.
And Ms. Sybrandt, if you would just announce yourself.
Yes, I'm Chelsea Hackmeister Sybrandt.
Help me with, I'm gonna.
My maiden name.
Okay, that's your middle name? Okay.
It's my maiden name,
Oh,
yeah.
your maiden name. Okay, well, I'll just refer to you as Ms. Sybrandt if
Thank you.
that's all right. Okay. All right, so we're here this afternoon because you filed a petition for early termination of probation.
Correct.
And the board has the benefit of your petition package. They are primarily concerned with the rehabilitation efforts you have undertaken since your license was placed on probation. The way that the hearing will proceed this afternoon is Ms. Crawford will present the petition package, and she will give the board members a brief overview of the history of discipline of your license. For each of those exhibits that she'll identify for the record, I will ask you if you have any objection to any of those exhibits. If you have an objection to exhibit, just please tell me. After Ms. Crawford provides that overview, I will then swear you in. You will be able to provide testimony to the board. As you know, the board has the benefit of having the information in your petition package, so you don't have to repeat anything that is in there. But if you would like to highlight anything for the board or provide any additional information, this is your opportunity to do that. After you are done providing your testimony, I will ask Ms. Crawford if she has any questions for you. You may object to any questions she asks of you. Just tell me again if you have an objection, and then I will decide whether or not you're required to answer the question. I will then ask our board members if they have any questions for you, and the same rules apply. If you have an objection to a question, just please let me know. After the board members have had their opportunity to question you, I give Ms. Crawford one more chance, and then I make sure you have the last word. During this proceeding, I cannot give any legal advice, but if you have any questions about the procedures, please ask me, and if I can answer the question, I will. Any questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Your Honor. The petitioner was issued a licensed marriage and family therapist license on November 30th of 2016. On June 20th of 2018, the board filed an accusation which resolved by way of a settlement that was adopted by the board effective March 28th, 2019. It placed petitioner on probation for 5 years, which will end March 28th of 2024. The accusation was based on 2 criminal convictions. One conviction for a DUI on March 29, 2016, due to a blood alcohol level of 0.22 while driving at a high rate of speed. A second conviction for a DUI on September 21st, 2017, due to a blood alcohol content of 0.14, which resulted in a collision with another vehicle on the freeway at 2 in the afternoon. The accusation further alleged unprofessional conduct for the above incident and failure to report her conviction to the board within 30 days. As part of the petitioner's probation, she was required to undergo a psychological evaluation, psychotherapy, dependent support program, take education classes, drug and alcohol testing, and pay cost recovery and probation costs. In April of 2020, petitioner was granted a reduction in testing frequency due to completing 1 year of probation successfully. And in September of 2020, she was granted a reduction of frequency of therapy sessions from weekly to monthly. The petitioner is compliant with all aspects of her probation, and costs have been paid in full. The petitioner is seeking early termination while 7 months remain of her probation period. Your Honor, we have 6 exhibits we'd like to introduce.
Please do so.
The first exhibit is the memo to the board from the probation analyst summarizing the petitioner's probation status and compliance. We'd like a stipulation to introduce that at this time.
Any objection to Exhibit 1?
No.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the notification of hearing to the petitioner of today's hearing date.
Any objection to Exhibit 2?
No.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 is a certification of license history for the petitioner.
Any objection to Exhibit 3?
No.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 is the petition for early termination of probation and attachments in support. We'd like to introduce that as administrative hearsay and direct evidence of any statements by the petitioner.
Ms. Hybrandt, just a brief explanation. Council has requested that some of the documents be considered as administrative hearsay. So in a court proceeding, typically hearsay is not considered. It's an out-of-court statement made by somebody. It's being offered for the truth, but they're not here testifying. And so typically that can't be relied on. But in an administrative proceeding, it can if those statements supplement or explain other direct evidence. So for example, if there's a statement about your attendance at counseling made by your counselor who's not here to testify, but you provided documentation showing evidence that you attended that counseling, and then you testify about that counseling to the board. Those statements then supplement or explain your testimony, and then they can be considered. So with that explanation, do you have any objection to Exhibit 4 being admitted?
No, Your Honor.
Right. Exhibit 4 is admitted, and then to the extent there's hearsay, it will be considered as administrative hearsay.
Exhibit 5 is a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order and accusation, which are the underlying documents in this case.
Any objection to Exhibit 5?
No.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And Exhibit 6 contains psychotherapy information pertaining to the petitioner. We would like to introduce that, but have that introduced under seal, as it does refer to some of the mental health and behavioral health issues that were discussed with the petitioner.
Any objection to Exhibit 6 with the understanding that I will place it in a protective order so it can't be released to the public?
No, thank you.
Right, Exhibit 6 is admitted, and I will be issuing a protective order to protect Exhibit 6.
Your Honor, I do not have any other evidence or witnesses to present.
Right, so now is your opportunity to testify. The first thing I need to do is swear you in. So if you'll please stand. Let's raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please have a seat. And please state and spell your name.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Hackmeister Sybrandt. Chelsea, Chelseaa. Sybrandt is Sybrandt.
All right, Ms. Sybrandt, it's now your opportunity to address the board. I'm just going to remind you to keep your voice up. Speak a little more slowly than you're probably used to speaking during a conversation, all right?
Great, thank you. I want to first start by saying thank you for having me. I'm very, very grateful to be here. I'd also like to thank the board for the opportunity to continue to practice over these past few years. I love my profession and I love what I do in the San Diego community. I work with women, couples, and young families navigating infertility, pregnancy loss, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders.
I'm going to slow you down just a bit. I
Thank
just got the eye from our court reporter, and I never like to
Sorry.
see that. So this is what we're going to do. It's really difficult when we read from something to slow down.
No.
So I'm going to have you start over and go much
Perfect.
more slowly.
Sorry.
Okay.
We'll try that again.
Okay.
From the top. So I would like to start by first thanking the board for the opportunity to continue to practice over these past few years. I love my profession and I love what I do in the San Diego community. I work with women, couples, and young families navigating infertility, pregnancy loss. Oh, I'm getting emotional. Sorry, guys. Pregnancy hormones. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and the transition to parenthood. Sorry, this is just emotional.
You just take your time, and if you need a moment, you just take a moment. Ms. Crawford?
Thanks, Vita. All right. Over the course of my career, I have worked in a variety of settings, including 9 years at UC San Diego and 7 years in my private practice, Authentic Wellness, and most recently in my new business, Spark Mamas. I am passionate about reproductive health and would have been devastated had I not been able to fully realize one of my life's purpose. The last 5 years have been humbling and hard, but they have also been the best 5 years of my life. Pardon me. I come from a long history of alcoholics, which includes both of my parents. For a long time, I thought I had a healthy relationship with alcohol. Yet over a series of losses, that relationship started to change. It wasn't one thing, it was several. It was the loss of my father in 2006, my diagnosis of type 1 diabetes while in grad school in 2011, and a patient infanticide in 2012, which happened early in my career. I didn't seek out proper support, and I coped by working very hard. I served on local boards, I worked several jobs at a time, and I realize now that I was trying to outrun my grief. I began using alcohol to support sleep and to relax. At the time, it felt like the only way I could disconnect from my work, which, as we know, works in the short term, but is a dangerous and maladaptive way of coping. I think it was Ernest Hemingway that said, first you take the drink and then the drink takes you. The combination of my stress, my untreated depression and anxiety, my alcohol use, and the trajectory of my chronic medical condition led to my first DUI. In August of 2015, 2 days before I was originally scheduled to sit for my licensing exam, I got pulled over on a Saturday evening heading home from a goodbye party for a colleague. I had several beers and I made the unfortunate decision to drive. The DUI process was long and complicated. I accepted a guilty plea on March 2016, which was coincidentally the same day that I sat and I passed my licensing exam. I completed all court-ordered programs. I disclosed the news to my supervisors at the time, but what I did not do was address my alcohol use disorder and my underlying untreated mental health issues. This period of time was awful. It was humiliating and shameful. While I did disclose the news to my family, who was very supportive, and a few friends and a few colleagues, including my supervisors, it was too painful to openly discuss and ultimately seek help. I was riddled with fear and guilt and uncertainty about what would happen, as I was still awaiting word from the BBS. As outlined in my stipulated settlement agreement, I reported to the board, but because at the time of my incident, I was not incarcerated, I went, at the time of the DUI, I was taken to the hospital. I wasn't taken to jail. I submitted my paperwork to the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and I don't believe they ever discovered it. It wasn't until my second DUI that all of this was submitted into evidence. All of this amplified the issues that got me here in the first place. The fragility of being split between two worlds, one where I was a successful professional and the other that was suffering from imposter syndrome related to my misdemeanor, made me sick, which, as we can all predict, only amplified my drinking. Inevitably, a second DUI followed. On Saturday, June 9th, 2017, I was in an accident. Due to the previous DUI, I was required to be breathalyzed. I had been drinking heavily the night before and was cited for my second DUI. This was both shocking and terrifying. I pled guilty in September 2017 and completed all of my court-ordered requirements, including a court commit jail time. Upon leaving my 2-day sentencing in jail, I learned that my boyfriend suffered a heart attack and was on life support. My mom picked me up from jail, and that same day I caught a flight to Utah and I said goodbye to him. I spent months on bereavement leave. I was beautifully supported by friends, colleagues, and family, all of which didn't know my secret. See, I told people, for example, that I was going on a silent meditation retreat instead of telling them I was going to jail. And we can imagine that the depth of this secret only made me a lot sicker. I went back to work after taking several months of bereavement leave, and I realized that I needed more assistance. I chose to participate in an outpatient program that aided in my commitment to my recovery. These 2 months at the Lasting Recovery IOP, along with the support of AA, began my road to recovery. My sobriety date is June 7th, 2018. I entered into a stipulated settlement with the board on March 2019. I've complied with all of the terms and conditions of my probation, including drug testing, AA support group attendance, and my education requirements, therapy, psych evalu, etc. I'm ardently committed to caring for my mental and physical health. I engage in ongoing therapy and have resolved my symptoms of bereavement and PTSD, and have been in remission of symptoms of depression, anxiety, and substance use that led to my alcohol use. I have worked closely with my treating psychiatrist since 2012, as well as my therapist, and I follow all of their treatment recommendations. Please see their letters of support on pages 56 through 61. I also attend regular 12-step recovery meetings and have cultivated a lovely supportive sobriety network, including other professionals in recovery and a sisterhood of women in AA. I completed my 12 steps with my sponsor, Sonia, in 2020. And despite the fact that both of my DUIs have been expunged, I'm very open and communicative with other colleagues, friends, and therapists about my own story and the consequences of my use. Everyone in my network knows that I do not drink and I will not return to alcohol use. Community belonging and purpose are also very important to my recovery and to my professional safety. As such, I am very active in San Diego's perinatal mental health community and share an office space, Point Loma Mental Wellness, with other individual practitioners that are experts in the field of maternal mental health. Please see their letters of support on page 24 and 28. In December of 2022, I launched a business and long-term dream called Spark Mamas with my former supervisor and colleague from UC San Diego. See her letter of support on page 23. I also maintain an appropriate client census to allow for ample time for self-care and play, including meditation, exercising, cooking, gathering with friends, and maintaining a great glucose control. Finally, I met and married a man who is also a therapist and understands my commitment to recovery. He understands the gravity of this process and my desire to get my license in good standing. There we go again. Sorry.
Just, it helps sometimes just to take a deep breath.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, as much as you can.
Thank you. My husband, Jordan Sybrandt, is very supportive of my decision to put my sobriety first. He also does not drink. Please see his letter of support on page 26. I apologize. It is with all of these aspects in mind that I feel confident that I'm safe to practice as a therapist. In asking for early termination from this probation, I am not exiting the program alone. I have a robust support system and an excellent toolkit. I have demonstrated that I have completed the personal work and the clinical work that is required to adhere to the standards of our professions. I hope to be awarded early termination so that I may fully focus on my growing family. Additionally, because my license is encumbered, I'm not able to accept insurance, and I hate when finances are a barrier to care. So I thank you for your time and consideration of this petition. Ooh, thank you.
Ms. Crawford, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Do you have a date that you consider a sobriety date?
Yes, Mrs. Crawford, June 7th.
Okay.
And that was June 7th, 2018.
2018 and
For 5 years.
what is significant about that date?
I began my treatment program at that time. I had taken leave for about 2 months after my partner's death, and that he passed away on October 28th. And I took leave until January. January, I returned to work, and I wasn't ready. At that time, I realized that as much as I had tried to maintain sobriety, I didn't have the tools. I hadn't asked for help. I thought listening to podcasts, reading books, that could help me, but I needed more. And at that time, I realized that it was life or death. And so I took 2 months and went to lasting recovery. And I entered the program on June 6th, and my sobriety date is June 7th.
Did your friends and family know you were going into?
Yes, at that point, I was very honest.
And what's your future intention with regards to alcohol?
I intend never to use again.
and sometimes this question seems simplistic, but it never's a long time. So
Yes.
why?
Why? The last 5 years have been very rich. They have been very fulfilling. I realized that I started drinking at a young age, growing up in Southern California with two parents who were an alcoholic. I think they bought me my first cocktail, which I went to the liquor store with them, and I liked pineapples, so they bought me a bottle of Malibu rum when I was 13. There was a lot of life that I didn't know what life looked like without casual drinking, social drinking, or habitually drinking. These last 5 years have been significant in that life is very different, but life is also much better. Due to being a type 1 diabetic, I realized that drinking is actually not conducive to my health. So because of that, because of everything that I have been through, and because of the value of my life without alcohol, I don't plan on returning to it. Additionally, my husband does not drink. Many of my friends and family who have been with me through this process are also very invested in my sobriety, and I think they too would not be complicit in my drinking.
Were there triggers that you felt you correlated with your alcohol drinking prior to 2018?
Absolutely. One of those was stress. Another of those was needing to ask for help, but not knowing how to. I was typically, and still am typically, the person that people go to for help. I also think, finally, poor sleep hygiene, unregulated diabetes numbers. Those are some of the physiological things that I think led to my use. All things that have since resolved in the last several years.
So stress and not asking for help seems significant since you deal with a population of people who are suffering from infertility, pregnancy loss, and they're coming to you asking for help. So that sounds like that would be a trigger for you.
My not asking for help.
Okay.
Yes. So currently,
How do you ask for help?
yeah. So actually, this pregnancy was a 2-year journey of IVF and included multiple losses. During this time, I had to ask for a lot of help. During my sobriety, I had to ask, or my recovery, I had to ask for a lot of help. I also had to be really vulnerable and show a lot more of my tender and my weak spots. This process showed me that it's okay. I have been able to ask for help from family who, everything from taking me to my treatment program to lending me money for my attorney. Everyone helped very graciously, very kindly. During times where I did have to prioritize my health for whatever reason in these last several years, I was able to ask for help in order to do that, whether it would be from my treating psychiatrist, from a therapist, from a friend, or from my husband. During the course of these last 2 years of a very long IVF process, I was able to ask for help from multiple therapists, friends and family who were able to love me and hold me when I wasn't always able to do that myself.
You mentioned that you are married, and is that the only person that lives in your household?
Yes, him and my dog.
And your dog? Can you speak a little bit about your work with your sponsor and how you benefited from that?
Yeah. One of the things I was actually sharing this with Dr. Lipton is that when I was at the IOP, I was required to attend AA meetings. And one of the things that attending those meetings showed me was that there were a lot of people, just like myself, who were on the road to recovery. People who had licenses that were encumbered, whether they be physicians, nurses, therapists, a lot of women who were my age who had similar interests. And being able to be friends with, for example, my sponsor, who's a woman I respect, admire. She was involved in a startup tech. And for her to not only show me how to live a life without alcohol, but also how to have fun doing it was incredibly beneficial to me.
Did you work the steps with your sponsor?
I did. I worked the steps with her over the course of 2020. I continue to meet with her, not as regularly as I used to, but I continue to attend my meetings that I can walk to. They're just down the street. Those meetings are early morning. I also go to a women's meeting in the afternoon. So while I still continue to, I still hang out with her, she's well integrated into my friend group. I don't meet with her at the same consistency as I did while I was working the steps with her in between 2020 and 2021.
Were you able to work all the steps with her?
I was, yes.
Did you find any that were particularly difficult?
I will say that going through my step 4 was challenging. It was also probably the most important part of that work, doing a fearless moral inventory of all my character defects, all the people that I've wronged, and all the reasons why I had wronged them was humbling and incredibly helpful. Additionally, going through my step 9 and making direct amends with my family, friends, and people whom had been a part of my addiction was incredibly helpful and uplifting.
Do you intend to continue with AA meetings after probation is terminated?
I do.
And what about, what's your involvement in therapy?
I meet with my therapist weekly. I actually established care with him prior to my stipulated settlement. I plan to continue to see him, and as I plan to continue to see my psychiatrist. My relationship with my psychiatrist began in 2012. There have been times where I've been on medication and times when I've been off of medication, and I still maintain regular consistency with him just because he's been a longstanding part of my community.
And what would an early termination of probation, how would that positively impact your life?
Yeah, my hope is to end termination early so I can fully focus on my family. The checking in component is a little bit challenging. There have been times where I've forgotten to check in and it causes a great amount of stress. And so to be able to alleviate that stress while I'm on maternity leave would be really beneficial for me personally, for me professionally. Again, having an encumbered license was part of the reason why I was no longer able to work at UC San Diego in the Women's Reproductive Mental Health Clinic, where I'd worked for about 9 years. I didn't pass med clearance. So being able to get credentialed with insurance companies so that I might be able to work with people who can't pay my cash pay rate is something that I would look forward to adding into my private practice.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
I'm now going to ask our board members if they have any questions, starting to my right with the board chair.
Hi, Chris Jones, Chair, LEP member. Thank you for being here. I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Right, and continuing on.
Hi, Abigail Ortega, LCSW member. Thank you for being here. At the beginning of your testimony, you got emotional, and I heard you say that this is hard, and just wanted to hear a little bit more about like where you are in this process, and like what continues to make it hard, other than like the obvious, right? That you're here discussing this with us, but just in general, where are you in your healing?
Honestly, I did not expect to cry today. It's actually when I love telling my story. I'm really proud of how far I've come. I think it's hard sometimes to go back to those convictions because it feels like a lifetime ago. Part of what I think contributed to my use was having like 2 split selves. This part of me where most of my drinking was done alone. And one of the things that I am very open about is kind of integrating all those parts of myself so I can show up and there can be messy parts and there can also be these like fully healed, new and exciting parts. And honestly, I think it's just pregnancy hormones that it just feels overwhelming. I've thought about this day for a long time.
Got it. Thank you. And another question, what is your relapse plan?
That's a great question. So one of the things that has been really helpful is living with my husband who knows about all of this. He and I will often check in if there has been a trigger, if anything, if I thought about alcohol at all. Thankfully for me, I haven't had any urges, any cravings, any desires. But I would say my first line of defense is him, my therapist, my psychiatrist. My other lines of defense are a lot of my close colleagues who have been with me on this journey, as well as my sponsor, who lives down the street. So they're all part of my relapse prevention plan. Apart from that, a lot of it is prevention, right? What are the things that I'm doing to make sure I'm taking care of myself so that some of those triggers, whether they're physiological cravings or whether they're more behavioral things that have potentially caused stress, overwhelm, is really keeping those things in check and making sure I take good care of myself so I can get ahead of it, because I know if I get behind it, it's too late.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm Eleanor Uribe, LCSW. So you mentioned, I think when you were talking about the triggers, you said that, you had stress, you had not knowing how to, looks like adapt, ask for help, poor sleep, diabetes. So I know you mentioned a lot of, people that you go to, meetings that you're attending. What other things do you do for self-care?
Yeah, so I have a regular meditation practice
Mm.
that is very helpful. So exercise, prior to pregnancy and our IVF road, I was doing Orange Theory. Now it's a lot of walking. My best friend lives up the street, so we walk regularly. It's also making sure that I eat really healthy and really clean, and making sure I'm really protective over my sleep. I also have a lot of, in terms of professional self-care, I have a great supportive system of therapists who I do bi-monthly dinners with, of a bi-monthly case consultation group. And then I also have a quarterly group that I meet with of other like-minded therapists where we talk about our career goals. So those are all part of my self-care. I'm also maintain my medication and my supplements. So those are things that help me preventatively.
Mhm. Okay. And so life is going to change. It's changing for you. And yeah, that will increase, like you said, the stress and all those decreased sleep and all that. So yeah, make sure to, use your plan. But anyway, what would you tell your younger self now?
Oh. Sorry, that's a great question. I think if I could go back, I would have told myself just to get help, that it's okay. I think that there was a long time where I didn't know how. And if I could go back, I think that I would have gotten help probably after my dad passed. That would have been a huge, huge asset to me.
Yeah, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to my left, please.
Wendy Strack, public member. I don't have any questions at this time, but thank you for being here.
John Sobek, LMFT, no questions.
Max Disposti, public member. Actually, only one question because I noticed you're almost done with your probation.
I am.
It's just coming up in March 2024. So first of all, as my colleague said, thank you for coming here and making yourself so vulnerable and sharing your story publicly. I know for a lot of people that we see, sometimes they share with us. It's a healing part of their own healing journey. So we respect that. And I was just curious to know that you've done so much already and you're so close to the deadline. Why now? What brought you to do the petition for consideration for early termination?
Yeah, well, I am close.
Mhm.
And part of why I actually didn't apply earlier was just life was complicated and there were a lot of other irons in the fire. But ideally, getting off early termination would just allow me to be present with my family.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thanks
Which-
for that.
Would you mind sharing? And if you don't want to share, please feel free not to say so. When are you due?
January 2024.
I think that might just help with the understanding of
Yes.
Yes.
what the time frame is.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Your Honor, for asking that. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Susan Friedman, public member. I don't have any questions, but thank you very much. And you have 7 months left on your probation,
I do.
but you should have your baby before that. Sounds like interesting timing.
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member. My questions have been answered. Thank you, Judge and Max. I was going to ask you more about your why, but it came out. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everyone. Any additional questions, Ms. Crawford? Anything further you would like to add?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Any closing remarks, Ms. Crawford? Any closing remarks?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Is the matter submitted for the board's consideration?
Yes.
Ms. Crawford?
Yes.
Matter submitted, record is closed, and we are off the record. You are free to go. Thank you so much.
Yo, I'm sorry, you guys. I did
No,
not.
no
expect that.
apologies. I always remind people there's no apologies necessary.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Take a short break and then we'll continue with closed session, correct? You're very welcome. All right, well, will 10 minutes be enough, Max? Does that work? All right, we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back for closed session. Oh, that's right. Sorry, right. Oh, I look at my script. Terrible. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're concluded. We'll move into closed session. Thank you for your participation in today's meeting. Tomorrow's board meeting will begin at 8:30 a.m. Good? Gavel?
This is the WebEx moderator, and this will conclude the public portion of today's meeting. Our WebEx session will end. We'll see you again tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Thank you.